Well, here we are back again, spy number 23, as we use the spy numbers here. Spy number 23 of Chasing Labels. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Billings, and with me, as always, is, I shouldn't have told you guys this last episode, but he called himself the informational backbone of the show because he's the smart guy.
I never said that.
You did say that.
These are all lies.
But yes, he is. He's a very smart guy. But we're back again for another episode talking physical media, and this time we are joined by a guest, and we always love having a guest on to geek out with us. And this is one we've had in the wings for a long time, because this guy's a very busy man, so we had to make sure we got him in the schedule a while back ago. And he worked on a lot of stuff. He's worked with Shout Factory, Paramount Presents. He does a lot of special features work. He writes for he's a feature writer in magazines like Fangoria or a lot of different magazines, horror magazines. Mr. Justin Beahm. How you doing, man?
We're doing well, guys. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. And it has been a while. It was nice to be scheduled out and have something to look forward to here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, speaking of podcasting, I know for the way I discovered you, really, I mean, I'd seen, some of your features, obviously, through different releases, but I really got to listen to you more intimate way when I discovered your podcast that you used to, because you don't really do that anymore, do you?
I'm just so busy now.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find the time. So, yeah, I unfortunately don't have time at the moment. I think the last episode was like 2 years ago.
Yeah. But it was the Justin Beahm Radio Hour. And, I enjoyed it. I mean, I was going to bring it up because one of my favorite episodes you guys did was the Elijah Wood episode where he was talking with Spectrum Vision, his company.
Yeah.
And that was a great episode hearing about, because I love The Greasy Strangler. So I love that movie.
Too.
Yeah, and that movie's crazy. And
I sent my friend a meme today on that.
Oh, did you?
It's one of those films that just keeps, once you see it, and especially if you see it with someone, it keeps coming up from that point forward. It just becomes part of the landscape of your vocabulary with your friend, whoever it is.
Yeah.
You've made it through this experience. Now we're going to celebrate it for the rest of our lives.
I remember when I saw it initially, I was like, because at the time I was like watching a lot of trauma films. I was like, this is like the most polished trauma film ever. Like it's the craziest, like, oh my God. But,
That's funny.
Yeah, they did a lot of other, like Color Out of Space and, producing a lot of that stuff like that. I love their company. So like that episode was really great.
Well, thanks, man.
But yeah,
I miss it. I miss it. It was just like a chance to have long form discussions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of everything I'm working on normally, like day to day, I guess you could say, it's all edited down. We can't include a lot of the side roads that we get to experience a lot of the most interesting discussions on, in my opinion. So that was just my excuse to have long form discussions with people that I am friends with and care about and stuff like that.
That's great.
It was fun.
That's great. Andrew, any questions for our man here? I know you're always about going back to the beginnings.
Yeah, I'm always about getting everyone's origin stories about where their love of movie comes from, and I guess we'll get into more of your more professional side later on, but I guess just starting out on a more personal note, where did your love of movies come from? Where did your love of, Blu-rays and DVDs come from? Has this always been a part of your life?
The movie thing started when I was little. There was a little theater in town called the Garden Theater, a single screen thing that my brother and I would ride our bikes to. And they had matinees on Saturday. They'd have like a double feature for kids. So we'd go there and spend a number of Saturdays. But it really wasn't until the home video boom that this whole thing took off for me. Because in my town, it was really remarkable that for this, because I grew up in Iowa. And there isn't exactly, you wouldn't think that it would be a hotbed for rentals. But once the very first one that popped up in the area was actually in the lobby of a U-Haul rental place. I'll never forget it. It's gone now. There's a gas station where it was, which is kind of sad.
Well, funny.
But they had.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. But I was like, funny enough, the first rental place I remember going to was in a Kroger, which is like Harris Teeter's. Like there was one inside of a grocery store.
Yeah. Well, they were everywhere because they realized it's basically. Yes, the tapes were expensive at the time. This was the age of the $100 cassette, right? But you're going to make that back in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, it's just pure profit for handing someone something. So everyone was catching on to this. And from that little spindle in U-Haul, the first movie I ever rented was Greystoke, Lord of the Jungle. I'll never forget. It was in a clamshell case.
Man.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the first one I remember renting. And then from there, it popped up at all the grocery stores in the area had them. We had even that little garden theater, that theater I mentioned, they had them in their lobby. I remember seeing the Friday the 13th sequels up there and just sort of like, what is that? Before I even knew anything about them, just intrigued by what. And then it really was when a place called Pharmor, Pharmor, came into town. And this was sort of the precursor to the superstore, the Super Targets, the Walmarts and things, at least in my area, where it had everything from pharmacy to home goods to grocery to whatever. The real gem in that store, though, was their video rental area, which was completely separate from the store. I mean, it was connected, like you walked into it through the store, but it was its own sort of really a standalone thing. And you could get 5 movies for 5 days for $5.
Oh, man.
And they sent them home in, remember the plastic squeeze cases? So you kept the actual VHS box in there and you would squeeze the bottom of it and the tape fell out.
Yeah.
It was like that. And so we got to take the boxes home with us to watch the movies. And that's like, to me, and forgive my rambling, but that to me is kind of like buying an album and having like looking through the booklet as you're listening to it, or having the gatefold open and sitting in front of you as you're listening, and you're seeing the band in a way. It just enhances the experience. So that to me was this permanent marriage between the art associated with these boxes and the movies that were on them. And really video rental places or art galleries.
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, I mean, now it's more blind buying, but then it was blind renting, just based on exactly what they wanted us to be focusing on, and setting the hook in our mouth with that salacious cover art, or the dead pit box where you push the button and the eyes light up on the guy, or whatever it might be. Like, the gimmicks always got me. And so my friends and I would rent armloads of these movies, and just way more than we could ever watch in a week or weekend. And then we'd have these sleepovers where we're promising we're going to get through it, but we all fall asleep by midnight, and whatever it might be. And then the public library also started having videotapes. And so I jumped over quite a bit there, but it sort of went from that spindle to the library to then the renting around town on our bikes and these epic trips and weekends of pretending we were the Monster Squad mixed with marathoning as much as we could get our hands on. So,
dude, I mean, I think you're a little older than us, but that we still had them experiences too. I remember one of the first movies I rented was Stephen King. It was Thinner. I remember renting Thinner, which I think though is a little campy. It's still kind of underrated out of the Stephen King movies, but I remember watching that as a kid, and I'm just being like, God, I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of sleepovers, so it was just me and my dad. And him showing me like Friday the 13th and showing me.
So he was cool with all that.
Oh yeah, I was watching Freddy Krueger at 8 years old. Oh
my gosh.
And I turned out okay. I'm not. But
what about you, Andrew? Was it the same for you? I mean, how did you?
Yeah, for me, it's similar kind of origin story to a lot of us. Is the VHS boom of the late 80s and 90s was kind of the thing that got people into movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, I also had that kind of paired with going to the movie theater every week, to see the new movies, because in the 90s, it was like every weekend was a different 90s blockbuster. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time, we didn't know.
Yeah.
But, seeing Jurassic Park and then seeing like Independence Day, Armageddon, all these big larger-than-life action films of the 90s, at the time when you were, I don't know, in your elementary school days, I kind of spent those formative years in the 90s. You're just kind of caught up in all of it. And then, going to Blockbuster and renting older movies that you kind of missed out on when you were a kid. Things like Back to the Future, Tim Burton's Batman, stuff like that. All of those movies at the time were just kind of informed your formative years. And I remember going to Blockbusters and other video stores, and there was nothing like the VHS covers back in the day. Most of them were lies. Most of them were just selling you.
A lot of bait
Most
and switch.
of them looked way cooler than the movie.
Yeah. But that's funny you bring up Batman, because Batman was that was a cornerstone moment. Yeah, okay, so in the beginning for me, it all goes back, and I always point directly to the Crestwood House monster books. And if I could reach my bookshelf, I would grab them, because I've been slowly collecting them over the years. They were hardcover library-only books that told the stories of different monsters. So it's like Wolfman, Frankenstein, whatever. But it wasn't just Universal. It was also Hammer. It was other companies. So I knew the stories behind a lot of the monsters before I had even seen the movies. And then when my library started getting the old Universal tapes, I would be renting those or checking them out and then watching those. And that was my big introduction to the whole thing. But really, in terms of blockbuster experience, like you're talking about, Andrew, Batman, Tim Burton's Batman changed the game for me, at least. And I think for some of my friends as well, because it was the first tape I ever owned. When it came out, it was you knew when you were going to the theater that you were seeing something, that you were approaching a spectacle. It was more than just than just another movie to see. And when you're younger, you don't really know to appreciate anything about film other than just take me away.
Yeah.
But Batman felt like, whoa. And then I fell in love with Tim Burton's aesthetic and tied that to Beetlejuice in my brain. And then when I saw Edward Scissorhands later on, and then I'm sitting as a kid crying in the theater wondering, how does this happen? And so I fell in love with Tim Burton at this time. But that Batman tape was kind of a rite of passage for me, at least, because it was the first time I owned a movie. To speak to the physical media side that you guys wanted to discuss, that was the first time that I had something in my hands that I knew I loved and that I knew I really was going to watch again and again. Whereas prior to that, the only thing I had was Dick Tracy's Dilemma, which is an old Ralph Bird, Dick Tracy film on VHS, and A Christmas Story, both of which I love. Huge Bob Clark fan, of course, but I still treasure both those movies, and I have them both on tape and everything, or on disc. But Batman was the moment when I made the decision, like, for Christmas this year, I want literally just one thing, and it's going to be this tape, and I know I'm going to wear it
Batman.
out. And then I did. I wore it out.
I think, don't mean to go on a Batman tangent, but since, coincidentally, Batman, my favorite comic book superhero and all that kind of stuff, seeing Tim Burton's Batman, and then one of my first movie theater going experiences around, because I think Batman Returns came out in 1992. I was around 5 years old. That was one of my first, movie theater going experiences. And for anyone who has seen that movie, it's Tim Burton to the extreme, specifically at that time. And
I still think it's the best Batman film. That's still my favorite Batman movie.
Yeah. It's many people's favorites for many reasons. Speaking of, a holiday movie, it takes place at Christmas, if anything.
About time to pull that back out.
Yeah, it is almost that time.
I remember on the
seeing
tape,
that at that time.
the videotape for Batman, I remember even the little release button on the side of the door on the front of it was green.
Yeah.
And I remember
Nice.
I'd never seen that before. Like, it's a green button. It's the littlest things in these
It's
tapes.
amazing what small a thing can, like, just stick in your memory, like that.
Yeah.
The color of the tape or the whatever it is. Like, there was these children's books growing up that I used to love that were about, like, Christmas and, like, fairy tales, and they had, like, the gold pages on the side. Like, you open them
the
up.
little golden books.
Yeah. And I used to, and just seeing the gold, I'm like, oh man, I still have them.
Yeah.
Or even,
I'm gonna
even like pop-up.
I have a couple of them too.
Pop-up books were magical to me as a child.
Yeah.
That 3D experience, that you could only get, with movies and TV at the time, like you were getting it in a 2D form. It almost kind of warped your brain a bit, kind of like how 3D does.
And I think this wraps around to just our love for physical media, film, and the whole, all these labels in general is just like why having that thing in your hands is part of the experience, like you said, the artwork and just the amount of work that's put into this one thing here is important, and and it's why we're here.
And I'll say you're going to see a transition here, Stephen. Watch out for it now. It wasn't until later on when DVDs would come out that I would become aware of special features.
Yeah.
So that is something that is kind of new, kind of blew my mind at the time. Like, because DVDs had come out in the late 90s. I was still 12, 13 years old. I didn't quite understand, what movie making was. I didn't know what an audio commentary was on a movie. VHS didn't have any of those.
Main menus were still, you're still trying to figure out main menus, like interactive screens. It was such a big deal,
the movie doesn't start right away. What's going on?
Well, that was
I know
listed
they
as a special feature. It would say like animated menu.
Yes, yeah.
As a
oh,
special
yeah.
feature.
Yes, it would.
They're still
still
throwing
have
in
all of those-
theatrical trailer. That's still a thing that's going through.
They're still
Yeah.
throwing those in.
Yep. Color. It's
Or
like when a
s-
hotel has air conditioning.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
You know.
We have electricity here.
Yeah.
It's like, good, I hope so.
Yeah, well, there were some. There was some. The special feature thing was wild because for me that is bound to Fangoria and Famous Monsters when I was a kid because those were my primers on behind the scenes. I didn't think about the filmmaking process until I discovered those. But then the special feature thing was a mind blower because I didn't know anything about Laserdisc. I had never been exposed to that, which is really where I think commentaries and stuff really began was on
Yeah,
the
it
Laserdisc
started on
format.
that.
But then Anchor Bay at one point started doing these. If you guys, I don't know if you remember when they started putting out like Argento and Fulci films and things. And Halloween, when they got Halloween 1, 4, and 5, I remember they had a 2-tape Halloween set, an orange cassette. The cassettes were orange, and the second one was like special features, and I think the film with the commentary or something. So they started putting these on VHS releases, and they'd also have reversible covers where you could slide the cover out, and on the back was text. It's like written by someone about the history of the film. That started to really expand my mind, but it wasn't until DVD. And the first DVD that I bought, I remember when I made the transition, it was hard for me. I was a little bit of a
Oh, dude, I was
holding out.
I was in a Blockbuster, and I was talking to the guy that worked there, and he was like, "Yeah, so all these VHSs, they're about to turn into DVDs." And I'm like, "Dude, what am I gonna do? Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Well, yeah, what's a DVD?
I have like a 500 VHS collection. Okay, like what are you doing?"
Do you remember when DVD players first showed up on the scene and they were like $900 or something?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember seeing them in like the flyers on the Sunday paper, and it's
Yeah.
like DVD players $9.99. What is that? You know, it was like it was a slow moving process now. And what is interesting is we're making this kind of transition now into another format, and it's like when's
It's
that
not as
format
it's not
changed,
as
but that's-
grueling as VHS to DVD though.
No,
'cause-
it's not. No, that was a massive shift.
Yeah.
We went. If you just look at the history of the home video world, going from VHS quality to DVD quality was a massive shift in just kind of audio, video and audio home technology at the time. It was really, really interesting. But Laserdisc was kind of a precursor to that, where you were getting digital video quality at home, but nothing like this. Because Laserdiscs, if anybody's ever seen a Laserdisc, these things are massive. They're huge.
And you had to flip them. You had to flip them over.
Yeah, and you had to flip them if the movie was like 2 hours plus or whatever.
Yeah, right.
just like that
it was
Titanic
the whole thing.
VHS. That Titanic.
But yeah, it was 2 VHS
Two
tapes. Same
VHS
thing with
tapes.
The Godfather.
Lord of the Rings. You had
right.
like a couple of them.
Well, by the time Lord of the Rings came out, I had already made the DVD switch. So that was
You don't
what,
know this, but Andrew
2002?
owns like every format of Lord of the Rings that he.
Oh, nice.
I started on DVD, Blu-ray, and then now 4K.
And then he has like
and
every version of Lord of the Rings. Like,
I don't have
like,
every
that's
like a
cool.
steel book.
I got a couple.
Like everything.
I got a couple.
That's cool. That's great.
Yeah, it is my most probably rebought, movies. I
Oh,
guess.
interesting. Yeah. What
Mine's
would
The
your
Matrix because
Okay.
The Matrix was the one that like it was the first movie I remember seeing as a kid, starting to think about like how did they do that, like but the behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
so I watched that tons of times, and then of course finally like DVDs and there was more I could read, and I started getting into like all the allegories about religion and things. So I got really into the Matrix. Of course, I dressed as Neo, at Halloween and all that stuff. But that was kind of the bit. I still have that VHS. That's one of the VHSs I keep. That with
hold on
Jurassic
to it,
Park.
yeah.
So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think it has to be Halloween '78.
yeah.
And that's partly because of Anchor Bay continuing to, this is the new release. Oh, this is newer. Or this has got, we found whatever. And so, yeah, that's
I may
my
have.
one.
I don't mean to cut you off. I may have to take back what I said about Lord of the Rings, 'cause I think I've bought in Halloween so many times.
Yeah.
So many times.
Well, speaking
think
of
I own
Halloween
that-
'78, though, you did do. I was going to bring up. You did that short.
Okay.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was, at the time I was worked for Trancas Films,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
the parent company of the Halloween franchise. So I was a vice president there. And I really wanted to put it back in theater, the original back in theaters. And our partner was Screen Vision, the company who was sort of just starting to branch out into these boutique bookings. And they wanted some what we call VAM or value-added material. They wanted something a little extra to entice people in the theaters.
Yeah.
And so I put together pretty quickly. It came about very fast. You'll probably never see the light of day. But this Can't Kill the Boogeyman, which is about the cultural presence of the boogeyman around the world and how that translates into the shape and Michael Myers in the U.S. But that was a wild experience. Yeah. The whole my relationship with Halloween has been long, and it's had its ups and downs. And now, most recently, I was brought in. TV Guide brought me in as guest editor of their monthly entertainment nostalgia magazine called Remind, and they wanted me to be their guest editor for this month's issue, this October issue. And so I pitched the idea, okay, that sounds awesome. I'd love to do it. Let's make it all about Halloween. And so I brought people in from all sides of the business, from the guys at Trick or Treat Studios, Fright Rags, all these different horror writers and stuff. Michael Dougherty, who made Trick or Treat and Krampus and stuff, who I'm just finished working on Krampus with.
Yeah, I was going to say the 4K is coming out soon, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's going to be a new cut, I think, of the movie.
It is. It's an extended cut. Yep.
Exciting.
So this magazine turned into this. I don't have one here, but it turned into it's a whole franchise celebration of Halloween. So, and my friend always says, it's kind of funny, Justin. Every time you finish a Halloween project, you say, "This is it. I'm just going to sort of let it be. I'm going to walk away." But then something comes back up.
It's your first love. You can't get rid of that first love. I mean,
you can't ever get rid of it.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of meant to be tethered to me in some way. And now I just signed on for some other Halloween thing that I can't talk about yet. But,
okay.
So it just
ironic.
I
mean,
no.
I know. Ironically, Michael Myers keeps coming back.
Yeah.
He never,
He
every
can't be
movie,
killed.
you think he's gone at the end. Nope,
right.
he's back again.
Let's ask. How do you feel about the newest iterations? The new, the last two films they've come out with.
It's an interesting thing because this series has had so many starts and stops and jumping over this puddle, and we're going to go back to this puddle.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like it's like a choose your own adventure in a way.
Yeah.
How you want to do it. So I don't know. I'm intrigued about. I'm always going to want to see a new Halloween.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I think that they've put forth some pretty daring stuff, especially with the newest one. I mean, there's some really ambitious concepts at play there. For those who haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin it, but I was really kind of taken aback. Even after interviewing David Gordon Green for the magazine, we didn't touch on, of course, the depths of the spoiler level type material. But I remember seeing it the first time and just, oh my God, they're doing what now? I mean, I was really surprised. So I just like that it continues. I like that they're trying to diversify this mythology, and they're exploring some less than obvious territory, which I very much respect. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I would really, I don't mean to cut you off, Steve.
Right. You do it all the time. It's cool.
But I'm just saying, I do it all the time anyway. But as you know, it's interesting because I guess keeping all of these kind of older horror franchises alive and for every generation, is really kind of a more cultural, interesting thing to me, because there are probably a lot of people who haven't seen the original films or don't know all of the lore of Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise and all the ins and outs. And now, with the new films, they can go back and look if they want to and all that kind of stuff. But they can also just kind of take the new stuff and go with it as well. You can kind of, like you said, it's a choose your own adventure now. I keep seeing these graphics or memes or whatnot of just, the Halloween franchise timeline where you have, the original film and everything kind of branches off there. Then you have the Rob Zombie timeline as well.
Yep.
You can go that route. And it's just so fascinating, the diversification of this Halloween franchise for the last, what's it been, 43 years or so?
Yeah.
And it's still culturally talked about.
Well, they're a guaranteed hit, right? I mean,
yeah,
and it's amazing
they're
because
not expensive, yeah.
And Rob Zombie really kind of rescued it from direct-to-video. I mean, it's been rescued from direct-to-video a few times over the years, but now it's a surefire hit. And it's interesting that they keep doing these while other franchises have struggled to continue, or they throw direct-to-video entries out, like that Leatherface chainsaw entry that was most recent that a lot of people aren't even aware exists. And yet Halloween continues as it does. And then you look at, so what I love about where we are right now in reference to franchises is that, yes, Halloween is continuing, right? But Friday the 13th has stalled. We know there's been some evolution now to the legal side of things, so who knows what's going to happen next. I'm very excited to see. But with a franchise that is stopped, I don't remember what year that.
Like
what year?
2008, I think.
Was it 8?
2009?
So, okay.
I think it was 2009.
Okay.
So think about this, though. That franchise sort of hit the brakes at that point. The fans want more. The amazing thing about where we're at right now with technology, access to the means, fans just started making new films.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't waiting for the studios to catch up and go like, okay, we're gonna put this back in track again. Halloween, you can sort of rely on at this point. There's going to continue to be Halloweens, but Friday, for whatever reason, it stopped back then, and so you get like the what is it? Don't Hike in the Woods Alone or something like that, and then they made a sequel. Womp Stomp Films, the guys who make those. There's so many fan films of this that are expanding on the universe in an organic, homegrown way.
Yeah.
I think that's to me just as exciting, frankly, as a new movie coming to theaters, because there's no boundaries for the fans.
Yeah.
They can really flesh it out into whatever, take it down whatever road they want to, and I just think that's really exciting too. I love the fans of this stuff.
Yeah, I think also,
close.
if you look at if you treat some of these characters kind of like how they treat Batman, where every once in a while we get a new iteration.
Yeah,
I think that's an exciting way to look at some of these characters, where you can, like Rob Zombie's Halloween is way different than Carpenter's Halloween. And I think that's the most exciting thing for me, is to just see somebody's different look at the character and how they. I don't know that I necessarily need like what Rob Zombie did when it comes to I need the backstory, but just to see.
But where else could you go? Like if you're trying to do something different, offer something different.
Sure.
There's no point. There really isn't any point to just remaking the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
You're going to have some similar core elements.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with him that if you're going to reapproach this stuff, if there's going to be something new, you need to offer something new.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the trend. Maybe not the trend, but it seems to be the not the arguments, but what everyone seems to talk about when it comes to resurrecting any old franchise nowadays is what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Do you fall back on what people know and love from their younger days, or what the franchises are known for, or do you take some swings for the fences and do some things different? And what is going to be the backlash because of that?
Well, I was going to say that's the tough thing is
we've seen both things happen.
Studios tend to want to rely on nostalgia, and then
they want to sell people what they already love.
and a lot of times, unfortunately, the fans play into that. They want to see the familiar things, but I think if you really love the thing that you're cheering for, you want to see something new and exciting. But
the way I always think of it is like in terms of remakes and things like that. I don't have any problem with remakes. I don't have any problem with reboots. I just love film. I just want to be entertained. I think the only crime a movie can commit to me, other than like abuse to animals or people or something for real, is boring.
Yeah.
The only job I think a movie has, in my perspective, is to entertain me in some way, to offer something. But I think the way that I've always described this is I think of it like a model in the middle of the room, and then there's a bunch of painters around the room. So if you were to have a model in the middle, as you're walking around looking at the canvases, it's going to be different as you make your way around the room. And that's the whole point of art.
Yeah.
The point of art is diversity. The point of art is variety in perspective. That's why there's more than one movie in this world.
Oh yeah.
It's the same thing with music. Guitarists are restricted to a neck on their guitar. Drummers are restricted to 2 sticks and whatever else. Like there are core elements that are foundational, but the whole point is to go wild building on top of them. And when you have something like a Halloween, there is a rich mythology there. We should have people coming in, new artists approaching a blank canvas, the same model in the middle is the mythology. Go wild.
Oh, yeah.
Do something. Take me somewhere I've never been before. And you know what? Challenge me. Make this as uncomfortable as you can, so I walk out thinking
let's go put Michael
about
Myers on a in the desert or something. Let's go put Michael Myers. I mean, there's going to be a lot of shadows there. With the sun's out all the time.
So.
Put him on a Jamaican island. To change up the location. Let's do it.
It's when it comes to art or art form, whether it's movies, music, painting, sculpture, whatever, it's so I don't believe that there's any boundaries to those things. They can be different things to everyone, or they can be nothing to everyone. It's so. I hate putting art in a box and just leaving it in a box, and it has to be whatever fits in that box. For me, that's what I've always loved about movies so much, is that movies can be anything, and they have been anything.
Yeah.
And we still see films today that continue to push the boundaries when it comes to content, when it comes to filmmaking techniques and all that kind of stuff. I love avant-garde film. I love art house cinema and all that kind of stuff. I love weird cinema. So just seeing that, it's such a fresh, unique take on the form of filmmaking that we've been so accustomed to. You know, three act structures and all that kind of stuff. I love when some filmmakers are like, no, let's throw that into the wind and just have movies be something ethereal, be something unquantifiable.
I haven't watched it, but you were just talking about Titane before.
I was.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
I was watching it, and that movie, you know, is unlike what I thought it was going to be, and unlike most things that I've seen before. So it's movies like that, movies like Raw, which was also done by Ducournau, her previous film. Those films are just, like, the concepts are just so out there, and I'm like, wow, they really wanted to make their films.
Right.
And it's really, really something to see. That's why I love film so much.
Yeah. And the filmmakers owe us nothing. The movies owe us nothing.
Yeah.
All that, like I say, I want to be entertained. That's my own thing. But I never walk into a movie and then walk out feeling like I was let down by someone, because that is what it needs to be. They are what, it's like a story. You can't point to a painting or a story and say, that's not right, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
You can just say that doesn't appeal to me, or that's not for me, or whatever, but it still is perfectly just in its existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very true.
And you know,
But
people are consuming this stuff in different ways, you know, and that
Right.
I think has a lot to do with how people view things now, you know, whether they're entertained or not. It feels like everybody feels the need to see it at home now or on smaller screens, but I'm still going to the movie theater if I can. So,
Oh, and people are too. Look at the numbers on Dune. Look
Yeah, I
at the
saw
numbers on
40
Halloween
million,
Kills.
40.8, yeah.
Yeah, and Halloween Kills
Yeah.
Kills did 50.
Did it?
And
Wow.
So, I mean,
yeah, Halloween Kills.
with
And I mean-
simultaneous streaming, yeah.
yeah.
Which is really not for an R-rated horror film in these times. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
You know,
Considering
for
everyone
Halloween-
on Peacock can see it for $4 a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah,
You know,
for
so,
$5.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. But I want to get back down to you and kind of what you've been doing with Reverend Entertainment. And speaking of, I know we've been talking about movie releases and kind of all that kind of stuff, but I just, before we move on to kind of the main bulk of our show, I just wanted to get an inside look into what you do with that company and how does that all work? Because I'm endlessly fascinated by the sheer construction of these releases that I've spent ungodly amounts of money on.
There's
over
a
my
lot of money
lifetime.
behind this, you know, on these shows.
I'm buried in this, so I gotta know.
Yeah.
How does the sausage get made, as they say?
Well, I really, man, there is no, there's no structure
cookie
that
cutter
I can
way.
just point to and say that everything fits into this framework for it. But the way that it generally
Right.
works is that, so as you mentioned earlier, I partner with a number of different companies. So Shout Factory and Paramount are my two primaries. But I also do some stuff for like Vinegar Syndrome. I'm starting to do Arrow starting next year as well.
Nice.
And so they'll approach me, they being Paramount or Shout or whoever. Then whatever executive or executives I'm working with internally will reach out and say, hey, we got X film. Do you want this? Or we would like you to be on this one. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, what's the budget? What's the due date? Bang, bang, cool. Then I go. And then I start, and then the great thing about both really, there's incredible freedoms and wonderful things with both Paramount and with Shout. Shout's a little more open, a little looser, just because it's not a studio. They aren't beholden to such a structure as the others. And plus, Shout is really, I mean, everybody's involved with these are movie fans, of course. But Shout, especially Scream Factory stuff, Jeff and Cliff are just the most passionate horror fans. And so the more you can throw at it, the more they want. And
Yeah.
so I come up with my list of what I think would make for good features, good concepts, people I know that I can get to or people I'd like to reach out to or whatever. And really, in the beginning, it was me sending a list. Here's what I'd like to do. And they go, okay, this, and this sounds good or something like that. But now it's to the point where I just send updates as it's evolving.
Yeah.
And so I get my due date. I just start working in the background. I'm scheduling people, shooting stuff, recording things. I don't throw them curveballs because my whole concept for these is just to keep it 99% of the time restricted to people who are there. I don't bring in a bunch of talking heads and journalists, as much as I respect both. There's plenty of great outlets for that kind of stuff out there. But for me, my brand is these are the people who were there. These are the stories from the set. They're the stories from the production and legacy of these movies directly, as opposed to people sort of pontificating on what may have happened or what this might mean. Yeah. Let's just talk to the director. And I love taking all the weird side roads. I like bringing in animal trainers for commentaries. And I just finished Killer Party, which I love the movie Killer Party so much. And there's this great band in it called White Sister in the beginning. Have you guys seen Killer Party?
No.
Oh man,
I have to check to see if I have, because I may have.
It's this Canadian. It's just so good. It comes out actually this week. Comes out in 2 days.
Okay.
I mean, as we're recording, I should say. Sorry if I spoiled the date thing on you here. But it's got a double fake beginning. It starts off with a girl at a drive-in with her boyfriend, and then she walks into an empty concession stand and really where is everybody? Goes back out to the car and a zombie attacks her. She realizes it's a zombie, this is a zombie movie or something. And then all of a sudden a music video begins. and in the concession stand is this great band playing. And it's like synth and kind of hair metal-y hybrid. And they're called White Sister. And then it's an entire music video of them in this concession stand doing this, mixed with zombie stuff at the drive-in. And then at the end of that, you realize it's one of the main characters in the film. This has all been happening on her TV. So it zooms out twice. From the girl in the car to a music video, then to the real movie. Anyway.
I love that. Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yes.
But I've been fascinated.
You sold the movie. I'm going to have to watch that movie now.
Well, the thing is, I've seen it because when they announced it, I went and watched it. Yeah, that beginning is wild.
Oh, it's great.
If I have to sell anybody on the beginning of that movie is the best way to sell it.
Oh, and what's extra great, too, is that it really has nothing to do with the rest of the film. None of that even matters.
Nothing at all.
But this band, I really love band movies. I like fake band movies. I like real band movies. Well, it turns out White Sister was a real band. And so I said to my friend years ago, because Killer Party has been on my wish list forever, and I'm sorry for rambling on this one. But
no, you're good.
That's okay.
I swore to him, if I ever get Killer Party, the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting together a feature on White Sister. And he's like, no one's going to want to hear that. I'm like, no, everybody's going to. Anybody who loves Killer Party is going to want to hear this. So when I got hired for it, I was so thrilled, immediately went about researching and found the 2 surviving members and have a whole piece just dedicated to the band. Yes. And it's not even, it's hardly, there's movie stuff in there. They talk about making the movie, but it's about their legacy and their time on the Sunset Strip and being part of the hair scene in LA. And anyway, so that was the point of that, was the side roads. I love finding these alternate angles on stuff, but it's all people who were directly involved for the most part, outside of a couple of historians on some older films. And so then I will, I send my updates in, and then I'm shooting. So as my role as producer, really Reverend Entertainment is just one person. It's just me. I do have some crew people that I hire to shoot, like DPs and stuff like that. But in terms of the scheduling, research, the budget work, location scheduling, conducting the interviews, most of the time. And then editing.
Yeah.
And then all that's all just me.
You're making me tired just hearing you talk about it.
Oh, man. It's crazy. It really is crazy. So then I will cut everything together and I submit it. And then we go through however many revisions are necessary. Some, like if they license from one studio, maybe a little more complicated a process. And some studios are like, just do what you want with it. And then I don't have to make any edits.
Yeah.
And my process has evolved over time. In the beginning, for the first few years, I was working with a series of great editors because I didn't know anything about editing on my own. And so I'd sit with them or, work with them remotely to cut stuff together. And now the last about a year and a half or so, I've been doing everything myself. And so it's a busy process, but it really just begins with getting the assignment and then making my wish list and just trying to find as many people as I can and get them on board and get everything shot and recorded. Happy to break down any element of that you want. That's kind of the overhead.
There's so much that must go into it. When you first started out, just one question. When you first started out, did you approach the companies yourself, or did they approach you because they were looking for people and they were just like, hey, let's put out some feelers. Let's see who would want to take on these projects.
It's kind of a weird thing tied to Halloween. Actually, it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was working for Trancas at the time. I had produced the Halloween 4 and 5 Blu-rays because it was their first time on Blu-ray for both of those. And I did commentary with Dwight Little. I brought him in on part 4, who's the director of 4, and then with Don Shanks, who was Michael Myers on part 5. And from there, and at the time I was writing for the horror mags. I was doing Fangoria and Famous Monsters and Scream out of the UK. No, that hadn't come yet. So it was Fangoria and Famous Monsters primarily. And I was at a convention where the guys from Shout Factory approached me, and they had a list, and they're like, hey, we'd like to start teaming up on stuff, and is there anything on this list that appeals to you? And at that time, on their list was Tank Girl, was one of the things on there, and I'm a huge fan. At the time, I was in the early stages on a book on Tank Girl with Rachel, the director, and so I said, oh my God, we got to do Tank Girl. That'd be amazing. So that's really where it began, was from a discussion with them on the essentially convention floor. It was a lobby of a hotel at a convention, and it's just grown from there. And Vinegar, I do a lot of just editing for, and Brad there will call me up and be like, hey man, you want to come in on this? Or he'll announce a title and I'll say, oh, I don't care what you have. I want to be a part of this. I need to help with this in some way. So we do that. And then Paramount was a situation where, they had seen some of my stuff, and they approached someone at Shout Factory and said, who is he? Like, how do we get in touch with him? And then they reached out, which was, that still blows my mind. That the day that call came, the world shook.
We talk about Paramount a lot on here because, it's like they woke up out of some sleep and started putting out physical media through through their own studio, and then of course Imprint seems to have been getting a lot of their stuff.
They were always kind of, as horror fans will acknowledge, it felt like, come on guys, like you guys have Friday the 13th and you're just going to put these out like this. You're not even putting the right masks on the cover or whatever, and it just felt like a lot of years of missed opportunity. But the fun part about that is that makes it even more relevant now with the Paramount Presents series, and even the catalog things that we've done, like Bad News Bears and all these other, like The Last Castle. And it's offered, I mentioned earlier some tremendous opportunities on both fronts, and where Shout is more open for content and quantity. There you go, you got the Bad News Bears.
I on this show is kind of a running gag where I've got movies around me, so sometimes we'll mention something and I'll just pull it out and hold it up to the as if people can see it. Well, but I've got all kind of stuff around me.
That's a great example right there on that one though. When I interviewed Jackie Earle Haley for that, he mentions in the interview at one point, he was like, my dad was on set one day and we were messing around with the Super 8 camera he had just picked up, and then he went on to some other story. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, dude, does that exist? Is that footage somewhere? And he goes, no way. There's no way. And then a few days later, he's like, hey, my wife and I think we found it, and we're going to try to transfer it. Do you want it? I'm like, do I want it? And so it turns out I'm sure you've watched it, Andrew. It's footage of him on, like, sort of getting the hang of his motorcycle. Butterbaker is it's the scene where he rides up and lights the cigar for Butterbaker in his car, or Buttermaker, and it's this completely iconic moment, and the only known behind the scenes footage from this. And we never thought in a million years, I never thought we'd get it cleared through legal and everything. But it did, and it's on there, and it's the most exciting little 3 minutes, because it's like, this is literally the only piece of history that exists capturing anything from behind the scenes on this movie and video.
I'll say this as a collector and just a movie fan in general. I'm always surprised when I see catalog titles get new features.
Yeah.
Because I'm always surprised that the company would pay for to make these special features, because oftentimes they don't. Oftentimes they just port over what they have from wherever. But also, it's just nice to see that extra effort taken. And also, specifically with Bad News Bears, we had waited so long for this to get a Blu-ray release, because this along with the imprint release is the first time it's ever been on Blu-ray, I think, at least available here, if memory serves. But I was surprised to see new stuff on here. So kudos
yes.
to you and creating this, and kudos to Paramount for putting in the effort for Bad News Bears, because I think this is like an anniversary of some kind.
Yeah, and
it's like
they're really big
45
on the
years or
anniversary.
so.
Yeah, they are. But and that's a great example where they come to me and they say, really, usually they're just looking for like one thing.
Yeah.
They'll be looking for like one new interview, and I'm always pushing. No, we need to do more.
Yeah.
And do you have Breakdown? Did you get Breakdown?
I was just going to bring up Breakdown because I'm a big fan of that. That was one of the movies in my VHS collection that I was always waiting for an upgrade for.
Yep.
And I was like,
which also took forever, right?
yeah.
We're always
Yes.
we waited forever
Yes, it
for a
did.
Blu-ray. And on that one, I just had no breaks. I'm like, no, we need to do this.
Yeah.
I think we can get this. And so one person became two, became three. Then I'm interviewing Martha De Laurentiis, all this stuff with Jonathan Mostow. Then we unearth the alternate opening sequence, which no one thought that Paramount didn't even think they had it in the vaults. and the archive team there is absolutely incredible. And if you they want to see this stuff out there as badly as the fans do. But it's not always on record. It's not always on the sheets. So they will literally go and look through the archives physically, finding what we're looking for. And time and again, we've turned up with things that no one thought were even there. And that was a great case of that, was that alternate opening. And so we did that. And I had been pushing forever to do a commentary with Kurt Russell, because I'm a huge fan of Kurt Russell.
Love Kurt Russell, yeah.
And I worked on Big Trouble in Little China for Shout, which I made into this like ridiculous list of like 15 features. It was out of control. And then Escape from LA. And I couldn't get him on board for both those. It just, things weren't lining up. But finally it all came together with getting he and Jonathan Mostow on the commentary for Breakdown. It was such an amazing, rewarding moment.
Yeah.
Because I knew what it would mean to fans to have these guys together, and to just hear Kurt's commentaries are famous. They're so beloved. His stuff with Carpenter especially, but he's always so great. But that's a great example where they're like, "Can we get one piece?" And I'm like, "Well, let's." So I keep pushing and adding more and more.
Yeah.
And Bad News Bears was that way. That was another one. Like, it started with Kevin Smith, and it grew out from there. And I just love seeing how much we can get in there, how much, and trying to find those diamonds that no one assumes are going to pop up.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't announced these yet. Well, there's some things.
Go ahead and say so. No, I was kidding.
Some things where you get someone and you're just like, pinch me. I can't believe that this is happening.
Yeah.
Which happens so much. It happens so often.
Ah, man.
Yeah, and yeah, Stephen, I know that we were looking at his because on the website, justinbeahm.com or Justin Beam's Reverend Entertainment, there is a list of all of these stuff that you've worked on over the years. So if anybody wants to take a look at that, they can go do that, and you'll be surprised about the things out there that you'll probably have in your own collections at home.
I mean,
so those of you listening,
just recently, like he worked on the Friday the 13th. You worked on that set.
Mm-hmm.
The one I saw here, the Body Parts that recently came out. God, I watched that movie for the first time recently. God, that movie's bonkers.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's like
Eric Red's Body Parts.
like a different What did I compare it to? It was like another movie we recently watched where like because I was gonna say Eyes Without a Face, but that's not it.
No, was it that movie with
was it The Hand?
Resurrection?
The Hand.
Was it Resurrection?
No. Idle Hand. I was like, it's like Idle
Oh,
Hand.
I did that
Idle
one
Hands.
too. I did Idle Hands. I did The Hand.
Yeah.
With
Oliver Stone.
And The Hand was a good example because that's one where I got Oliver Stone for an interview.
Yeah,
and it's he's very forthcoming and like he's very open about his shortcomings and about the things he was going through at the time.
Yeah.
Which I thought was incredible, and that was just such a special interview. But I did those two, so Idle Hands and then The Hand, and then
Body
Parts.
I was like, Body Parts is like a serious like they're trying to take Idle Hand and make it serious, but it's not. You can't take it serious at all because it's kind of crazy. It's just
it's wild.
But it's a fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
But you can go on there. He's got like the deer. Another one that stood out was the Deer Hunter. You worked on the Deer Hunter features on that.
When that was announced. That was a big one for me. That was I think that was announced before we started chasing labels, and that may have been on Cinema Discovery Project. And I was like, okay, we got to start off the show with this because Deer Hunter for years had been available on a somewhat lackluster Blu-ray release from Universal. So I had always hoped that a lot of those releases would get, bigger, much better re-releases later on, and we got one with The Deer Hunter, and yeah, that's an amazing release. Another movie that I always tell people about is The Blob, the one from the 1980s. I think is great, and I know everyone talks about the original one with Steve McQueen because he's in it, but I think The Blob from the 80s is a great body horror movie.
That's great.
And it's like a perfect movie to watch this time of year. And there's so many things that you've worked on. Like you said, Escape from LA, the new Event Horizon Screen Factory release or Shout Factory release was one that people were heavily looking forward to in its release. That's a movie I saw when I was way too young. That was a movie I saw probably like late night HBO viewing when you're not supposed to be watching.
Yeah.
In like the late 90s.
Yep.
And like
another rite of passage, right?
Another rite of passage, like 12, 13 years old. And it's like I remember my cousin had described the movie to me.
Oh.
And I, of course, I was little, so I didn't quite understand what was going on. But then I watched it, later on. And it was unlike anything a like 12 or 13-year-old probably should have been watching at the time, maybe. But I remember that. Okay. I remember shouting. I remember when we were going over this, Stephen, The House of Wax, the one from the 2000s. Yeah. I remember I had to sneak that into an episode when it was announced.
Well, that's one where I got Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the Paris Hilton one.
Like, what?
I gotta ask this. What is your favorite? Because when I was listening to that some of your podcasts, you talked about like some other encounters you've had with other celebrities or other filmmakers or things. You brought up Roger Corman, getting amazing. How was meeting working with Roger Corman? Because that had to have been awesome. Like,
you're walking into a room with he's history. He's living history.
Yeah,
and that commentary was really unique. I've been a fan of his, and I had interviewed him a few times over the years for different magazines too. And that I was friends with Dick Miller, if you know who Dick Miller was, and
yes.
I was the original plan because what you're talking about is a commentary for Piranha because Shout did a steelbook of Piranha, and that's another good example where they weren't planning; they were just going to release it on the steelbook with it may have been an upgraded transfer, I don't remember, but I was like, no, let me do this commentary, please, because Roger and Dick Miller had never done commentary before on anything together, and yet they were both instrumental in each other's careers, and Dick was there from very early on with Roger's stuff, and he kept popping up in his movies. And Dick told me a story years ago where he was such a go-to guy that he would play, and there was one movie where he's playing a cowboy. He's riding his horse, and there's these Native Americans hiding out on the attack. And he's a cowboy riding through and doing this thing. And then later on, they needed the guys to be the Native Americans, and so they made him the Native. So he's like fighting himself in the same movie, which is so Corman. But anyway, Dick. They're both just so incredible as artists and creators, and I was so excited, and they were so excited to be on a track together. And unfortunately, Dick passed away the week prior to the track, and which was it was just a very awful experience. I was talking with Lainey, his wife, throughout the final days, and and it was a really emotional thing. And I talked to Roger after, when it came time that following week for the thing. I'm like, do you still want to do this? Because I can find another route or something. And he goes, I think we should. And so I called up the studio and I said, hey guys, we're only going to need 2 live mics in the room, but I want the third one left there. I want the chair, the table, the headphones, the mic, because I really like Dick is going to be there with us. And I talked to Lainey. She knew when the session was, but she had a lot of stuff going on. And the story to the Dick Miller end is that we're there and we're setting up, and then I look to my right and there's Lainey in the door to the studio, and she came with her granddaughter, and then she sat and listened to the whole track. And so Roger and I turned it into a career retrospective for Roger, touching a lot on Dick Miller projects and a lot on their interactions over the years, a real tribute to Dick. And it was hard not for everybody to be in tears by the time it was over with. And my friend Anthony was there taking pictures, so we actually have a little bit of it captured, which was really special. But that day was nuts because I go and I pick up Roger, and he wanted me to drive him there because he's like, well, we'll catch up, we'll talk on the way there. And so I pick him up, and he's like, well, I'd like to go through McDonald's, and if I may, get a burger. I'm like, sure, Roger Corman, we can get a burger if you want.
Of course we can.
Yeah, whatever you want.
So we're driving and talking, and he's like, so what are you seeing on the scene? Like, he's picking my brain. And when I first got to his office, he was in the middle of a conference call on a movie he was trying to shoot in Haiti or something like that. He's still hustling to this day. And
he still has his name on a lot of projects.
And he's like, it's just one of the few countries I haven't shot in yet, so I wanted to correct that. And anyway, we're in the car, and we stop at McDonald's. Would you like something? And I'm like, I'll just take some fries, sure. And so Roger Corman bought me fries, which I thought was really sweet.
Did you keep the
nice.
the box that the fries were in?
I should have, yeah. We get to the studio, and he's sitting there just eating his burger, and I'm setting up and talking with the engineers and everything. And that's when Laney showed up. And it was wild. And then just sitting there and for an hour and a half, unobstructed discussion with this absolute cinema icon about everything.
Oh, man.
And in an emotional state, because we were both really feeling the stuff about Dick. And with Laney right there, it really genuinely felt like Dick was in the room.
Yeah.
And so that was unforgettable. That was truly unforgettable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the biggest. That's got to be one of the highlights. Though sad, one of the biggest highlights of your career so far. Yeah. But,
without a doubt. Yeah, it was a real honor.
Yeah, and I think for us, we've talked about Roger Corman's unquantifiable contribution to cinema.
Yeah.
People don't, I think, really realize a lot of the things that he did back in the 60s and whatnot. We talked about it, I think, when we on Cinema Discovery Project, the previous iteration of the show, we did a whole episode on New Hollywood.
Yeah.
But of course, we had to go to the origins of the New Hollywood of the 70s, and a lot of that was Roger Corman. That's where everyone had gotten their start.
Films, the motorcycle
the grindhouse
films,
cinemas of the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, he was trying. There was an establishment that was built into the studio system at the time, and he was really kicking those doors down in a way, not to try to get in. He didn't want to get in. He was completely content being outside, and there were a lot of people who wanted work that didn't fit into the studio model.
Yeah.
And so where are they going to go? So he became a clearinghouse in a way for all of these actors. I mean, people, all the technicians, everyone on every side of it. It was not only a training ground where you could learn in a very fast-paced, very intense and demanding environment, but also you had to, it's with an ingenuity that can only come out of the kind of almost improvised nature of a lot of the solutions that you have to come up with in that type of environment, where you don't have layers of studio money and people to hand you whatever you need.
Yeah.
You have to come up with it. And so I think it was a really valuable place for people who did, Jack Nicholson or someone who at the time everyone's looking at going like, no. But Roger's like, come on in, and then look what happens.
Yeah.
And
Dennis
how many
Hopper.
people can we say that about? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Coppola.
Coppola. Yeah.
Coppola and Martin Scorsese, all these big Titanic names that are still in people's minds today, all had gotten their start at AIP back in the 60s, making the Roger Corman pictures at the time. And his contribution to cinema is just monumental. And Dick Miller is someone who I think a lot of people know him just by his aesthetic.
Yeah, you would know his face, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and you would just... I remember as a kid watching Gremlins, and Dick Miller's in Gremlins.
Yep.
I watched it when I was... I didn't know who Dick Miller was, but he kept showing up.
Yeah.
He was in Gremlins, too.
Yeah. If it's a Joe Dante movie, he's probably in there.
Yeah, he was in Small Soldiers, which finally just got a Blu-ray release, too. And he shows up in there as just the delivery guy at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. He kicks the whole thing off with the toy soldiers.
Yeah, he's just one of those faces. He's one of those guys. He was so great, man. He was so special and funny to the end. The last photo ever taken of him was him with all these flowers that I sent to him when he was in the hospital, and it's him making this like goofy face, holding these flowers in the bed, and he's just through to the end. He was a character, and he's just. I mean, I was just talking tonight about how character actors are oftentimes some of my favorite people in film. And that's who I grow attached to, not so much stars usually. Yeah. It's usually the character actors. And, man, he was a really special one. He was really great.
Definitely.
Yeah, there was a really good documentary for those of you listening called That Guy Dick Miller. Came out 2014. And it gives you a real personal sense of who he was. And his career and all of those things. If anyone's interested, because I watched it I think a year or so ago because I heard someone talking about it, and it really gave me all of the insights into Dick Miller and how unique of a person he was.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful up until the end, as you can attest to. Stephen, we've gone through all of this stuff. Where do you want to go to now?
Justin's done talking about himself. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But no, this was great, man. I'd be honest with you, I didn't think we would spend an hour talking, just doing Q&A, but I love the fantastic conversation. You took us a lot. We talked about, our love of the beginnings of our love for cinema and all that stuff and physical media and getting into some of your work. It was a great conversation. And now we're going to move into our normal episode. If you want to talk some releases with us.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it, man. All right. So, Andrew, what do you want to start with?
I guess maybe we'll start off kind of how you listed it out on the show notes.
Sure, I guess we'll do that.
Indicator, a company we've talked about many a time here on the show. We just had someone who does an Indicator podcast in John Matthews, and they are having their 5th anniversary sale on their website. But it's not only a sale, they decided to re-release one of their older, more marquee releases in the Sinbad trilogy. And Stephen, it is a re-release, but it's not a straight up like we're just gonna dust off a couple of these ones we've had in the back this whole time. And this is a bit different.
Yeah, it's a repressing, and people are asking, are there differences? Yeah, apparently there are a few differences in this repress. I think it's kind of a smart move. I mean, these labels, I think, understand that, more labels than others, but like they understand the collectability of these, and that's important to a lot of people. So they did change a couple things to make this kind of like the second edition of this set. So it's got like, I think, a different color on the belly band. And then, like, I think it's only Blu-rays instead of dual format. So it's got some subtle changes, but it's still a great set. Justin, have you seen any of these films?
I haven't. I mean, well, actually, I should say I'm sure I had when I was younger. I was never really into what I guess people sort of refer to as the sword and sandal stuff.
Yeah.
I really never got into it. But I know that I think this is a 4K set here, so I don't know if this stuff if it's been available in 4K before or what, but it's at least the restoration end of it. It's a 4K, which is cool. And this speaks to that discussion earlier about the importance of what you're holding in your hand. It's not just, I own this movie, no one can pry this out of my hands. Mm-hmm. It's also, I want something that's not only great to look at, but a lot of people love to display these things. And just look at the packaging on this.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's absolutely beautiful, and it would be such a standout on any shelf, which is so key. And I think that also shows an investment in presenting the movies the best you can outside of just the picture. It's understanding that fans have attachments on all kinds of fronts with these things, and I think it just looks amazing, and what a great package.
Yeah. I was one of the ones that decided that I would buy aftermarket on the first edition. So I spent a little bit more than I would like to spend on that set. But, I can say I have the first edition of it. And it's a great. I've only been able to a chance to watch the first movie, and it's really good, really epic for the time. And of course, you get some of them Ray Harryhausen effects in there. It's good. It's fun stuff.
I was going to say that the Harryhausen is worth it. The trip alone, and effects like Phil Tippett, I see is interviewed here. Tippett's an absolute legend. I've interviewed him before, and he's incredible. The lineup of people they have involved. You have there's even isolated scores, which that's kind of a rarity now on these releases, which I think is really fantastic. And this 80-page booklet is nothing to sneeze at either.
Oh, no.
I mean that's a substantial investment. So so great. And Harryhausen, I mean, endlessly fascinating, that stuff.
Yeah. They also got a couple Harryhausen sets. Separate from that. So, I mean, I think are they both out of print, Andrew, or is one of them out of print?
Let me take a look.
I think just the first volume might be out of print.
Yeah, they're both
okay,
out of
of course
print now.
They are.
I mean, ironically, you can still find the first one in other places, but that second one is a rare a rare get, as this set was. I could say just for somebody who's buying this stuff after they've gone out of print and have gone the way of the dodo, these aren't cheap. That Sinbad set, I've seen on eBay people selling this for like $300 to $500. So when this was re-released, Steven messaged me that morning, and of course I was sleeping all day, so I didn't see it till later.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was able to jump on it because, as many people know on the show, I'm very late to the occasion when it comes to buying things.
I'm the
I push
impulsive
it to
buyer,
the
Justin,
limit.
and he's the I like to hunt around for the best deal into the last minute guy. So
It's a procrastination issue, I would say.
hey, he's got a healthier habit than me. Mine's not good. I'm gonna lose. I shouldn't announce this. Maybe I'll edit it out, but I'm about to have a baby. So
Congratulations.
yeah,
man.
thank you. Yeah, so we just found that out. So I was like, well, I guess that's the beginning of the end now. I can't buy as much
so
stuff
much for those
anymore.
movies. Goodbye pre-orders.
Yeah.
Maybe I can catch up now.
Yeah, maybe you can catch up to me. Yeah.
But this box set does come with the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. And it's all like Greek mythology stuff. Of course, the patented stop-motion animation of the great Ray Harryhausen. Just learning to talk about behind-the-scenes stuff. We were talking about filmmaking before. Seeing the way he developed all of that stuff using like background effects and stop-motion animation with models and things. Just endlessly fascinating stuff. But yeah, I was super glad that they decided to re-release this. I'm hoping maybe that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
Because I want to get my hands on some of these things. But that is from powerhousefilms.co.uk/indicator. They are having a sale for about a week. So depending on when you listen to this, it may already have
It's
passed.
probably already passed. It'll probably already be passed.
Probably
yeah.
already passed. But moving on from there, next on the list is 101 Films is doing a super duper deluxe edition of The Last Broadcast. And The Last Broadcast is a found footage film that predates the Blair Witch Project by about a year or two. And it's the film that kind of gets overshadowed by the Blair Witch Project when it comes to kicking off this kind of 2000s horror revolution of found footage films, which has kind of also gone away a bit lately and kind of lost its steam.
Well, I mean, it's like I think it's went through a little bit of an evolution because of technology. Either what's the one they do through webcams? Oh God, what is it called?
They did Unfriended.
There's Unfriended,
which was the Facebook. What was it, Facebook they were doing? I don't know. But then they had a Host. Was it Host? Where they did over Zoom call, and it was actually pretty good.
Was it? I
came
hadn't
out
seen
during
that
the
one.
pandemic.
What's the one with John Cho?
Searching.
That was good.
Yes, where his daughter goes missing, and it's just done from the perspective of him at his computer, like video messaging people and sending messages to people. Pretty good, but The Last Broadcast, like I said, predates the Blair Witch Project, and this is getting an extensive deluxe release. We were just talking about new special features. It's getting new interviews from the co-directors. It's getting 2 new audio commentaries, and then a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, limited edition booklet. It's getting a little bit of everything. But I didn't get a chance to watch this one. You said you ended up watching this one.
I did end up watching it, and it's okay. I didn't like it a lot. I didn't like it as much as I would say the Blair Witch Project, because there was a movie within the movie itself, and there was a narration in it within the movie, and I was just like,
You're
I don't
confusing
need a
me,
lot of this stuff narrated. Like, it's just like, here at the camp, tensions are rising, and it'll show like people like fighting, arguing with each other, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I can see them arguing.
So, Justin, have you seen this?
I did see it many years ago. I actually saw it after Blair Witch. I don't know what the release, when it originally hit video. I don't know. It may have been made before that, but I don't know. I found it afterwards, and I similar reaction to it. It didn't really do much for me. But more than anything, when you look at this kind of package here, speaking to the physical media side of things, this is what happens when you have something, especially these movies that are homegrown like this.
Yeah.
The directors are surely sitting on top of mountains of behind the scenes. They have every cut, every shot that was made, so they could build features all day. And I love that these guys at 101 were willing to go wild with this, with offering so much stuff in there. And I know that I've had an eye on them. I like what they're doing. They seem to have this kind of approach with a lot of things. I remember I was surprised that they did Pledge Night, because that was a movie that a lot of people have been looking for many years here as well.
Yeah.
And then they got some special features on that, like 3 or 4. So it's similar to Shout Factory. Like let's see how far we can push this.
Yeah.
I think let's see what we can give people, and I hope that fans are responding with supporting them, because something like this for a movie like Last Broadcast, this can help solidify a legacy of a film with a release like this.
Yeah. Yeah, one release 101 did that still I haven't really seen anybody else do anything with is Existence, the Cronenberg film. Yeah, they put that out, and it's a good release.
Mm-hmm.
And
they did our Silent Night, Deadly Nights too, because I did 1 and 2 for Shout, which are 2 of my favorite experiences in all of this. And they re-released those. I don't think they did anything new for those, but the packaging was phenomenal.
Yeah,
it was a really sturdy, solid box, kind of like the new Halloween 4Ks from Shout. And they had holiday postcards in there.
Yeah.
It was a really fun package. It was a really great way to reapproach those movies. So even when they can't add new features, they're still giving people so much. And I just love when labels do that.
Definitely. All right. Well, let's move on to the last couple releases we got here from Eureka. What do we got, Andrew?
For Eureka, it's their January releases, or at least what they've announced so far. And it's not a lot, but I do want to talk about them. One is a double feature of Chinese martial arts films Warriors 2 and The Prodigal Son. And the second is The Sun Shines Bright, which is a John Ford film from 1953, I believe. And what is unique about Warriors 2 and The Prodigal Son is both films are directed by Sammo Hung, who was someone who was incredibly influential when it came to the kung fu films at the time, the martial arts films at the time, and kind of, giving us certain things that, would carry on for generations afterwards, similar to what we discussed when we talked about what's the big set that's coming out later this year. The Shaw Brothers set. We talked about some Shaw Brothers films. And, of course, around this time, Jackie Chan was making films in China as well. So I believe Sammo Hung and him teamed up a bunch. He teamed up with a bunch of, well-known Chinese actors of the day.
I mean, like Jackie Chan. He's done a lot of stuff with Jackie Chan.
Yes. And I know, Steven, you've been getting all the Jackie Chan releases from 88 Films and from Eureka and from whoever's putting these out.
Well, they've done a lot of Sammo Hung, and Eureka has. They've recently they put out like Millionaire's Express, Spooky Kind, Mr. Vampire. Like they got a lot of his stuff coming out through Eureka. So if you're a fan, this is a good time to be getting into him. But yeah, I got a chance to watch Warriors 2, and that's a fun movie. There's one guy in there that's like I guess it's like crane style fighting or something.
Well, it's Wing Chun.
Yeah, and he's hilarious. He's like making all these bird sounds, and it's.
Oh my god, the guy with the glasses.
Yeah, the guy with the glasses. Yeah.
Yeah,
he was.
I don't think he's doing Wing Chun. I think he's doing like something. I don't know. He was definitely the comic relief.
But it was a lot of fun. A lot of it's just these films. Just watching all the choreography is a lot of what is worth watching these films for us, because so much is put into it.
The martial arts choreography in both Warriors 2 and The Prodigal Son is fantastic. And these were two of the early, more marquee films from Sammo Hung as a director, and he's in the films as well.
Yeah.
He plays a prominent role in Warriors 2, and he has a smaller role in The Prodigal Son. And I dug them both. I really liked both of them.
Justin,
I really liked them both a lot.
I have not seen them, no. Yeah. I mean, you can't not know Sammo Hung.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting. I mean, I'm more familiar with Sun Shines Bright.
Yeah.
Because as John Ford, I mean, that's the film that he's long. I remember reading about him sort of ruining the fact that movie was like sorry if I'm jumping, if you don't mind my jumping to the title, but
That's okay.
But he always sort of rued the fact that this film was cut, and that and he always said, this is my favorite film, but it's not my favorite film as it sits right now. I don't know that you're going to see my favorite film kind of a conversation with people. And so when this one was announced, I think they're doing a cut. Maybe it's not this release, but I think that they're doing the full uncut version of it that he originally wanted to have presented, which I think is such an important thing to consider. And that's, so many directors they fall to the mercy of producers, of studios after the film is kind of taken away from them, and they end up with something that they look back at and go, that's not my film. That's not the movie.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the movie that I made. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with directors who look back with such heartbreak on things like that. And this was one of them for Ford, even though he still considered it his favorite movie. I'm just thrilled that it's finally going to be seeing the light of day and the way it was intended to be seen. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, just reading the description here on Eureka's website, it says, the sun shines bright. It was 10 minutes of footage cut out of the original cut by Republic Pictures. I think it was like the last film he had with a deal with Republic Pictures or something at the time. And I know that this has made an appearance on Blu-ray from Olive Films back in 2013 here in the States, and I think it's the original cut there as well.
Theirs is uncut as well?
I think because it's 101 minutes, which I think is the same runtime.
Maybe I'm confusing the two then in my mind. I don't know.
No, I'm just saying there. You are right. It was cut, and for years, I guess on DVD and stuff, it's only ever been the cut version, which I guess would be 90 minutes. And now we're getting a much longer cut of the movie. And it says, fortunately, the original cut master was not destroyed and has now been fully restored and makes its UK debut on Blu-ray as part of the Masters of Cinema series. So you're right. It is getting restored. And what Justin says is right. This was John Ford's favorite film that he said from his career, which is a career filled with great films. Yeah. So it's kind of really surprising. For me, I love his smaller films like this. This is not like one of his John Wayne, cavalry epics. It's not Searchers. It's not any of those. For me, my favorite of his has always been The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It's always been my favorite because I just love the small interplay with the characters of that film and what that film is going for when it comes to the concept of, when it comes to printing truth versus the legend. Print the legend because that's what people want to hear about. People don't want to hear the truth that the man who they think shot Liberty Valance really did not shoot Liberty Valance. And it kind of plays to the idea today of the world is filled with, especially now in the internet age, the world is filled with so much misinformation, and so you don't know what to believe is actually true or not, depending on the source of where it comes from, even if it's from the direct source. And Justin, as you know, that you're interviewing all of these people who are direct sources, actors, actresses, people working at the film at the time, people's memories change over time. It always happens,
and you'll have conflicting stories, and you'll have in that case I'll present both because I don't want to. I've never been interested in red meat or like creating a narrative or redirecting a narrative or anything like that. So if two people remember the day differently, I'm going to have them presented separately and let them both tell their tale because that's their truth. And who am I to step in the way of that and decide one takes precedence over another? You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But I like that too because mythology, speaking to your point about that, mythology is important to these things. And I think that over time, one of the gifts that time gives filmmakers and fans of these things is that there's a certain something that grows around the movie that is bound to the movie. It's intrinsically tethered to it. But it's something that's been existing in the hands of the fans that the filmmakers can never anticipate or ever shift.
Yeah.
So we take these things and then we live with them for our lives. How many times have I seen whatever film over the years? And as I go in and out of relationships, these things are with me. They remain on my shelf. They're always there for me throughout whatever, and we spend our lives with them. And so they're intertwined with us in a way that's so deeply personal. And it's the same for the people who make them, because it always blows me away when people remember anything. Because I can't remember 2 weeks ago, let alone 20 years ago. But these people regale with these great stories and these really personal details about their adventures on these movies. And that changes over time because their perspective has changed. Their relationship with themselves has changed. And the last question that I ask everybody in every single interview is I say, what's your relationship like with this movie now? And that's resulted in some of the most incredible, it's resulted in tears, it's resulted in really poignant moments. It's resulted in revelations sort of happening on camera as you see people sit and let, like, something settles with them, like, I get this now, in a way. Yeah. And it's a really powerful thing for people to have the chance to consider, because they're living their lives with these. We are, as well as fans, but they have lived their whole lives with these things in certain ways. And I think it's important that they look back, get a chance to sort of share and dig in emotionally on what that means to them.
Yeah, cinema is always, I think as time goes on, has taken on a mythic life of its own for many people. And it's always been something larger than life as time has gone on. But it's really cool that we have all of this, archival footage, because as time has gone on, as we've seen over the last, several years, a lot of these people from a lot of the things that we know and love throughout our lives have passed away. Yeah. So we have to see, all we have left is that archival footage and what they've said and whatnot. So it's really cool to kind of bring things back down to a very human level when you hear people talk about projects that they worked on, 20, 30, 40 years ago, whatever. And it's very interesting. And there's always, I think, in cinema in general, people are always constantly evolving and reevaluating everything. I always bring up, certain prime examples. When Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo came out in 1958, it was trashed. Yeah. It was trashed. Now it's hailed as one of the greatest films ever made. Yep. So what do you know? I mean, for me, going back to what you were saying about, John Ford, having his film cut, and, so many directors and filmmakers have had their films cut. A few episodes ago, we waxed poetically about Orson Welles, who was one of my favorite, people in cinema ever. Mm-hmm. And all of his films, his entire filmography was nearly cut to where he didn't want it. Yet all we have is that legacy of those films. So that's how we interpret him. Mm-hmm. But when you watch something like The Magnificent Ambersons or, Touch of Evil, even though we have that restored cut, it's not his original form. But we have kind of just the myth of what his vision of his films and art would be. Yeah. So it's very interesting when we get into all of those kind of
And I was going to say, and it's in the physical media, having all this, when I talk to people about my collection, which of course they're always amazed by, they're like, why do you got so many? I'm like, I always call it my library, because to me, I look at it like it's an archive or a history that I'm collecting, and I don't want, I don't want to just keep that for myself. I'm, like I just said, I'm having a kid. It's for them too, and like you, and these people that are connected to these films are going to be gone by the time my kid's old enough to care about any of this,
right?
Or at least a lot of it. So it's like I think it's important that, that's why I keep buying this stuff. I'm like, I want to make sure that I have as much about this stuff as I still can, while it's still coming out. Because
that was the thing for me on well, first of all, a lot of these things might not carry forward too. Yeah. So that's why it's vital that people hold on to previous releases of things and don't just bail. If they care about the special features, don't just bail on your previous disc, even if it's DVD or something.
We always check.
I
always check to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, really make sure, because there's a lot of things that are lost to the sands of time that can't be brought forward because of rights issues or contract whatevers that are only going to exist back there 3 formats ago. So really do hold on to those. And to your point about telling people's stories and all of that Big Trouble in Little China is the best example on 2 fronts. One, in evolution for me, because at that time I was really into long form, just presenting a person on screen. Because Shout, around then, actually after Silent Night 2, they turned more to wanting individual features instead of documentaries, full-fledged documentaries. So I do 8 interviews. Now I'm cutting 8 pieces separately. And so for Big Trouble, I just went nuts. And like I said, it's like 12 or 13 interviews. But a lot of these guys hadn't been interviewed before in America. They are legitimate icons. Victor, I mean, if you look at the list of people on that disc, many of them were like thanking. They were so grateful to be a part of it because they're like, I have felt invisible there.
Yeah.
And so when I'm sitting there and I'm sitting with an editor, we're working through this stuff. At that time, I was still working with editors. I just want as much of their story as I can because they're probably not going to have another release where they're going to have the kind of opportunity to share their story. And how many of us get to have our stories captured? Mm-hmm. So this guy he's saying, this is the only interview I've ever done in English in America. And then you're saying, he's telling you his story. How do I decide, how do I play God with this material and say, no, we just want to hear about Big Trouble? Like, to me, it was more about, we just want to preserve all of this as we can. And that release in specific, because so many people were saying, I've never been interviewed before, this is the first time I've ever sat in this chair or whatever. I just wanted to preserve as much as I can. And I caught a lot of flack on that release for that because of the long form of these interviews. But and it was just a different approach I was taking at the time to things. But for that one, I felt it was so key to just put as much of it in as we could, because you're right, these people will be gone. Some of them were very ill at the time when I was interviewing them, and you just never know. But it's just such a tremendous honor to be able to capture that and put it somewhere, to sort of lock it into some sort of time capsule. So as long as someone can, in some media format in the future, find a way to port this forward, this person's voice will never be lost, like we've lost so many over time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, for those of you who don't have the Big Trouble in Little China collector's edition from Shout Factory, I would highly recommend it because it's, not just because Justin's here, but it has one of the most extensive special features packages you'll get for an individual film. And that's always something I think a lot of hardcore collectors are looking for, is getting the most for their money. Mm-hmm. I know, maximizing their value, of course. I think Stephen would agree with me on that.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a massively extensive list because I have it up in front of me right now, and it's just interview after interview after interview. And I personally, I like longer interviews.
Oh yeah.
So anything that's longer,
we do podcasts
is better
for 2 hours.
That's true, but
we like to
saying
talk
sometimes
and listen.
Sometimes there'll be a special feature, and this is not even to point fingers at anyone, where it'll be like, interview with so-and-so, and it'll be like 5 minutes long or 4 minutes and change.
Sometimes that's prescribed, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sometimes I guess it all depends on the parameters.
Whoever's paying for the thing, you can only fit so much on one disc. If you're only doing a disc.
Which Big Trouble became 2 discs because of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like 4-minute interview is a lot different than a 24-minute interview. Right.
Yeah.
It's very, very different. But of course, all releases are different when it comes to the parameters you have to deal with, or whoever's putting together these extras packages, and I guess time and editing and all that kind of stuff goes into it. But yeah, what I'm basically saying is the more special features for me as a personal buyer, consumer, the more I'm going to look into wanting to buy that specific release.
Especially when
that's where I think
competition's so high, like there's more and more labels coming out of the woodworks, and somebody, and if there's somebody over here, and we're region free, so we'll buy from anywhere. Right. And if this label in the UK is going to do a better edition of the one that's in the US, well, I mean, that's where we're at. So it's like, that
happened with Breakdown. There was an
Imprint.
Imprint did Breakdown shortly prior.
Yeah.
And I think Ballyhoo did a nice job on the features on that one. And we just happened, because it was in-house at Paramount, I was just lucky enough to have access to all these materials and things that they unfortunately didn't have access to. So both solid releases, but, they're different. They're justifiably different, depending on what you're looking for.
Well, if you're crazy like us, we buy them all. So like, the best example is Crash, is the recent Crash releases where there's like, initially there was a German release in 4K, and I bought that. I was like, man, I can add that 4K, that Crash 4K, thank God. And then what happens? Then Arrow's like, we're going to put out an edition, and it's in 4K. And then Criterion's like, we're putting it out. And I'm like, I can't buy this movie 3 times.
You guys, come on. Talk to each other. Stop this.
Stop, please. Who else wants to put it out?
Yeah. And they will all have different special features too.
Yeah.
Like for me as a collector, it starts out okay. If I have two different releases, what is the picture quality like?
Right.
If they're the same, then you go to the next tier. What's the audio quality like? Then the next tier is special features. Okay, this one has this. They have that. Some there's crossover, some there's not crossover. It really all depends on obviously licensing, and that's always what it always comes down to with a lot of these releases. So they're all kind of competing, I guess, for our money.
Well, let me ask you this, you
I
guys.
guess we do have the power.
So you're talking about breaking this down, like, okay, how do I decide what to buy it? Do you look into the sites that break down the bit rate per moment in the films? Because there are some of these really intricately detailed. I mean, it's really remarkable how in-depth some of these sites go with breaking these things down. And I'm like, man, I would lose my mind if I was trying to isolate just the disc that I wanted just for me. How could I ever be okay with anything?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't isolate the bit rate by scene, but I do take a look at the bit rate and the codec, stuff like that, because I've always said it on this show here, a lot of the codecs from the early Blu-rays releases from the 2000s, they're out of date. They all look bad compared to now. The technology when it comes to transfers and all that stuff is light years ahead of the way it used to be. So I'm like, a lot of those need re-releases, and a lot of them don't get them, and some of them do. And I'm just like always trying to tell people to make them aware, hey, you may have a Blu-ray from 2006, but if that movie gets re-released now, it's probably going to look a lot better. Yeah. And you may want to look at updating that if you so care for. But I'm always looking at bit rates, especially when it comes to the new format. 4K bit rate is like sometimes 3 times what a Blu-ray is now. And it's really fascinating. I've never really gone into what bit rates are and all that kind of stuff. Basically, the higher the bit rate, the better the quality tends to be because there's less compression, there's more room on the discs, and all of those things. And the codec is something that is basically what the video is formatted into. And not all codecs are, made.
Justin knows a little bit about
equal,
that stuff,
if you
probably.
will.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to get too into the minutia of it all.
But for our listeners, I mean, Justin's the expert here. He runs a whole business.
Yeah, I know. It's not so much for our
editing.
guests; it's for the people listening. Because when I first started out buying Blu-rays and all this stuff, I didn't know what any of this was. I had to learn from people on YouTube of what aspect ratios were and all this kind of stuff. Well, so I like to kind of pass the information on.
I think that it's one of the things that I always try to stress to people. Because no matter what I put out, even with the list of special features on Big Trouble in Little China, people are still like, well, where's blank? Why didn't you go after, trust me, we're going after them. If there's someone, if someone's involved with a film, on King Kong, why didn't you get,
Why didn't you talk to King Kong?
I mean, so that kind of thing never really fails, but and King Kong was a really special release, by the way, too. That was one where we just went crazy with it, with the television version and everything else. That was such an honor to be a part of. But the thing to remember that I encourage folks to is we started this discussion tonight talking about VHS and watching these pan and scan versions that we were just thrilled to be able to take home and enjoy. There was a time in life where we didn't give a shit about bitrate. There was a time in life where we didn't need special features. There was a time in life where we were just open to whatever was put in front of us. And I know that everything has evolved around us since then. But it really is such an amazing moment right now for fans, because not just in re-releases, but in new treatments of these things, the expansive special features and all of that. Any of these movies with one interview, even with a new transfer, being able to see it in 4K, because the film is what ultimately matters, that picture and that sound.
Yeah.
That's what you're buying.
Yeah.
You're not buying special features. And then beyond that, the special features are icing on top of that. In my perspective, as yes, it can drive people in if there's multiple releases on the market, like we're talking about, like with Breakdown, for example. Maybe you go one way or the other based on the special features. But just don't lose sight of the fact that this is an incredible time when I just finished editing Blades. Speaking to Trauma, we talked about Blades, the Killer Lawnmower movie, which is one of the most sincere tributes to Jaws that exists in film, and is such a blast. And I've been waiting for years, hoping that someone would do something.
That's Vinegar Syndrome, right?
It's Vinegar, yep.
Yeah,
but it's a Trauma film.
Yeah.
Because they have a great relationship with them. But I'm cutting this thing together, the documentary on that, just having so much fun with it, thinking, how amazing. And Vinegar is one of these labels that always makes me shake my head, just like, oh my God, how did they do this? Bloodhook is probably the greatest example.
Okay.
I love Bloodhook, one of my all-time favorite films. It's a purely Wisconsin movie that is one of a kind, and that and There's Nothing Out There. The fact that they gave proper love to both of those films has me forever in love with Vinegar Syndrome. And both of those releases are testaments to two movies a lot of people don't even know about still, but that they put as much effort into as a John Ford film or something else from a larger
Yeah, we
label.
talk about that all the time with them. It's like, we don't always like the movies, but if God, they put so much effort into every. Like I got Primetime Panic. Their the TV films they put out recently, and Andrew watched them, and I haven't watched them yet, but I'm blind bought them, and he said they're actually pretty good. You know,
that was from their partner label, Fun City Editions, who also go all out. But I bought Six String Samurai. I bring this up like every show. Yeah. That Six String Samurai release is amazing. Yeah. Like, of a movie that probably not very many people know of. They went full tilt when it came to the 4K presentation. It's a 4K release. Special features, new features,
documentary.
Where the director goes and basically interviews, as many people as he could find that helped him make the movie at the time.
That's amazing.
Really insightful stuff. I just learned so much about that movie.
And to add to the myth of that movie, they can't find the actor that was the lead actor of that movie. He's gone. They can't find him.
Yeah,
he was like a stunt guy in China, and they can't. They're like, that's the last time we remember hearing anything from him. He's gone.
Yeah,
he could be dead. Gone. We don't know.
That's back to mythology. See, that stuff's that's awesome. That's so cool.
I was like, man, this movie's even better now that I know that he just went into the wind.
Oh man,
he's in the wind. But yeah, Vinegar Syndrome. Severin we've talked about a bunch of times here.
Synapse
and these boutique labels. I'm constantly always impressed by the effort put into all of these, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's really amazing. We're seeing films put out with a level of quality that they've probably never been put out before. Yeah. Probably even better than when they were originally released,
and in the proper ratio. I mean, these things. Yeah. You're talking about picture quality and everything. To see a film as it should be seen in full, I'll take a little. Like, it doesn't need to be 4K for me. I'm not, so I'm just thrilled to get my hands on it. And I've discovered so much through some of these labels too. Like we talked earlier about blind renting when we were younger. It's blind buying now.
Oh yeah.
And I've been exposed to so much stuff that I never would have prior to now because these labels are making these things available, because historically, like in Anchor Bay, wouldn't have touched Bloodhook or something, even though I knew Bloodhook years ago. I just finished cutting stuff on a movie called Norway for one of Vinegar's sublabels that's coming out pretty soon, and it's this wild vampire movie that came out like 10 years ago and is essentially unseen around the world. I think there was one release in Germany at one point, but it's never been anywhere else. And Brad at Vinegar, and he just launched this new sublabel there, and he's bringing this kind of stuff into play here in the States. This movie is amazing, and I fell in love with it as I was watching it, and it's just such a gorgeous movie and an unlikely story that's so wholly unique that I'm just thrilled that there's a label who's willing to put something behind that. And so anytime anyone, like you talked about, these indie labels, man, they're doing such a good thing for history and for preservation, but also introducing people, because people say, well, like I remember when Halloween Kills came out, and there was this awful meme of saying, like, I see an awful lot of people criticizing Halloween Kills who then will go and blind buy a $40 B-grade movie and put it in their collection and sing its praises. Well, that's awfully and I hate that kind of online negativity in the first place. Totally unnecessary. But also, that kind of blind buying is introducing new generations to movies that would have been literally lost to time.
Oh, yeah.
These movies, this Norway, for example, would have never probably had another release outside of that one release 10 years ago or whatever. What happens to that movie then? It falls away. It goes away. And there are some bigger films that have suffered similar fates. Like when I got on at Paramount, one of my first missions there, and remains a mission, was to get Bringing Out the Dead. Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead.
Dude, yes.
Upscaled from DVD to proper 4K or Blu-ray release. And so that's a mission that I'm on, and I'm not going to back down, as annoying as I am to everybody at Paramount
I'm a big Nick Cage fan, so
me too.
Yeah.
Huge.
Tell Tell them you already have 2 sales in the bag right here.
You
guys,
already
the money-
You got
already
about
made
$40
back.
there, guys. Come on now.
Yeah, I know.
But
If that pushes them.
But that's a Scorsese film. Just imagine the scale.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about these little movies that are sitting on a shelf somewhere, like Sleepaway Camp. When I went to bring that to Shout Factory, because I was talking with Robert Hiltzik and Felissa Rose about trying to find a legitimate release for this thing, because Anchor Bay did that set years ago where they had a cut version of the movie and it wasn't whatever. So finding that movie was nearly impossible. But we ended up finding it was stored. I mean, it's a long story of how we found it and where, but it was in a very unlikely warehouse under a different name. And we had all the original elements, basically. I mean, it was a wild discovery, and we were able to essentially reconstruct that movie. And it literally looks better than it ever has before.
Yeah.
When you're watching it now, to your point about some of these movies are looking better now than they did on their initial release. That's a great case of that happening. Plus, its uncut version. Body Bags. John Carpenter's Body Bags.
Yeah.
That one is another one where John was sitting on it because Showtime shit out this VHS and DVD years ago with unapproved cover art without consulting with him, with a cut version of the movie. And once that went out of print, he just sat on it because he's like, I don't want someone else fucking with this movie. Yeah. Toby and I put too much into this.
That sounds exactly like John Carpenter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. But eventually we got to, in one of our conversations, I brought it up and I'm like, would you ever consider reapproaching that somewhere now? And we were at the beginning of the Carpenter cycle at Shout Factory. And I'm like, I think this is the time. This is like the best place. And he's like, as long as that fucking cover art isn't there, let's talk. And so we did it, and it became this amazing thing where he's on commentary with Robert Carradine on Gas Station and with Stacy Keach on Hair. And it was supposed to be me and Toby over the Eye, but Toby backed out at the last minute. So it was me and Sandy Carpenter King, who's John's wife and co-producer on it. We're talking over the Eye. And then there's these on-camera interviews, and it became this package that he never would have had happen before if a Shout Factory wasn't there to make the catch.
Yeah.
You know, if I knocked on the door of any other label, they probably would have just been like, we don't care. We don't understand the value in this. Even I don't know how it's sold. I frankly don't know. I think it's still kind of an unearthed John Carpenter movie, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And it gave John a chance. You're talking about celebrating people while they're alive. It gave John the chance to have this movie released the way that he wanted it to be released while he was here to be able to celebrate in that, which I think is important too.
Yeah. I think one of the big important things too that labels do that I think gets taken for granted a little bit that I guess has gone the way of with streaming is curation. You know, I think all these labels are kind of in a sense curating what they think is worth watching. And yeah. I'm not saying that, you know, that's always good. I think you should watch what you want to watch, but sometimes you don't discover things until these labels bring them up. Like you said, you know, they unearth something and they make it to where you can watch it and it not hurt your eyes because it's not pixelated on some YouTube.
New York Ninja.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. The New York Ninja that Vinegar Syndrome's about to put out.
And they had to like assemble this movie. The audio had been lost to this movie for years. They had to reconstruct, like rebuild this film to put it out there. But to your point, we couldn't have discovered it because it simply wouldn't have even been possible in another release unless someone put that kind of time and effort into doing it. Yeah. Which is awesome.
Yeah. And I just love, I love, you know, like, you know, we become loyal to these labels, you know, and you just trust in what they're giving you, you know. Yeah. You know, Criterion is kind of like they're the oldies, but they continue to put out stuff that people trust, and typically they're good. It's good stuff. It's always good stuff. And I feel the same way about, like, you know, Indicator. I feel that way, but, you know, like sometimes you just get loyal and you just keep buying everything that they put out and discovering new stuff. I mean, they got one Hammer set. They got all these Hammer sets they put out, and one of their Hammer sets I discovered a few, and I think it's volume maybe 3 or 4. And they got one movie in there called "Don't Take Candy from Strangers," and it's like this just weird thriller about this like pedophile. It's like I think it came out in 1959 or 1960. And this pedophile guy that, you know, is kidnapping kids, and it's like shockingly, you know, the imagery is shocking for the time. You're like, wow, where did this movie come from? Like, and it's stuff like
that. And from Hammer.
Like, it's Hammer. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I would have never found this, because when you think of Hammer, you're always thinking of like their horror stuff. But this is like a little bit more on the dramatic thriller side. Like, it's not like straight up horror. And I'm like, man, I would have never known this was a thing. But, you know, these labels are just, they're like pulling out stuff in here, and they don't know if it's going to sell or not, but hey, it's worth putting out there because it's interesting. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what I love these guys do, you know. All these labels.
Then it lives in the hands and on the tongues of fans.
Yeah.
Because it's the fans who celebrate it and say, hey, have you seen this? Pick it up. And so
yeah.
You may not know this label put this out, but if you know someone that you trust, then there's an extension of trust that's built into that, and then you're more willing to go pick it up. And then the great thing, too, when you're buying these things, you're not just handed the film. You're getting the story. You're getting the full package with extras and all of that. So you get the education, and you can explore it and satisfy that. If you fell in love with the movie, now you can dive in and dive deep just by going back to that menu again.
A lot of times,
and how valuable is that?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll go watch special features first, even if I hadn't seen the movie. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to see what the context is here. I don't care. I don't get spoiled by movies. Somebody tells me spoilers, it doesn't bother me. So I'm just like, let me listen to some of this and see if it gets me excited, you know. And usually it does, and I'm like, okay, now let's watch the movie now.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean that's why we do this podcast, because we want to. Even if we haven't, me and Andrew will try to spend as much time as we can watching the films and getting into some of the special features before we do the episodes, so that we can get people excited, you know, because even for things that might not maybe be in somebody's wheelhouse, we're like, okay, look, I'm telling you, this might look weird, but I'm telling you it's interesting. So that's why we do it, because we're loyal to all this stuff. We were like, you know, keep it going.
Appreciate what you guys do.
We don't want physical media to go away. You know,
it won't. I mean, and I don't think it will. I don't think it ever will, because people are going to need to own things. And whether if we're saying physical in the sense of a drive with a movie on it, or a disc, whatever it is, it's going to be there, and there's going to be a way for us to own these things, because the streaming thing is still very much evolving. There's a lot of exciting opportunity in that. There's a lot of great, especially immediacy to access, that I think is super valuable. And I think just like who would have thought that in 2021, when an artist appears on a talk show at night and they're talking about, here's their latest album, they're literally holding up vinyl. Who would have thought that would have ever happened?
I know.
That was a boutique thing for a long time, right? That was kind of it was CDs.
There's a record store in my town. Like, I'm like, wait, I didn't know this was here. What? Like,
there's
people
two.
are still opening up record stores?
There's two of them here. Yeah, there's no place to buy movies hardly anymore, but there's two of those. And I know Walmart has to the movie side of things, Walmart has a new emphasis on Blu-ray and 4K. So they have a different buyer now handling all of their movies. And so you're if you'll walk into your movie section there, it was shrinking, now it's growing again, and you're seeing a lot more end caps of 4Ks. You're seeing the DVD and the Blu-ray side by side. I
bought one of your sets you worked on. I bought the Fly box set.
Oh yeah,
in Walmart.
Yeah,
that and the Omen set. And also Vestron is another label that started to come out with stuff, and I think a lot of their stuff's going in Walmart.
Yeah. It's so I think that there is, to the end of physical media, I think it's always going to exist in some form or another. We're always going to be able to have these things. Special features are inherent. They're not going to go away, and there's always going to be an interest in the stories behind these movies, just like someone being able to have immediate access to whatever films they love. Yeah. So I don't foresee anything going away. Things will change as they always have, but it's always going to be there.
You make us feel that makes us feel better. Thank you for telling us that. But I think that's great. Okay, so let's go transition to our last segment here.
Speaking of labels,
we're going to talk about as many as we can get in here. But so we decided to do something fun for the end here. So we're gonna all divulge some of our favorites. I've said limit it to 5. We can do as many as we want, I guess, but we're gonna try to maybe limit it to 5. Probably go on tangents, I'm sure. But 5 of our favorite horror films, since we're about to hit Halloween here. 5 of our favorite horror films that have been released by one of our favorite labels. You know, any label you want. So of course our guest of honor needs to go first. I want you to surprise us here, because I know you're a big horror fan, so I know you're going to throw some curveballs.
Well, I already mentioned a few.
Well, let's do one at a time. We'll go around.
Okay.
So give me your first one here.
This release I love so much that I have it framed because it means, I mean, the film means so much to me, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. And I honestly, I'm not even sure how to pronounce the name of the label, but it's a Japanese release of a ghost story.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
This movie for me it's so, just your point earlier about different strokes for different folks, kind of.
Yeah.
But you talked about art house and things. This movie is such an emotional experience. It really is. And I came into it blind when I first discovered it. And it's a movie, it's the only one that I've ever actively tried to engage people with. So when Amazon has sales on it, I will buy copies of it on Blu-ray, the regular, like the U.S. version of it, the Region A.
Yeah.
And I will send them to people as I meet them. I'll meet them at a film festival or something, or I'll meet them at a whatever event. And this movie may come up, and if it does and they haven't seen it, I don't even say you should track it down. I say,
here you go.
Email me your address. I will send you a copy of it because I want people to experience this movie. For those who haven't seen A Ghost Story, it's just such an incredible movie. But this release here, not only does it have a great lenticular cover, which is absolutely beautiful. It's a nice box that it came in. It has a full booklet. It also has poster reproductions and lobby card reproductions in this, as well as the full Blu-ray. And it's such a beautiful package that I keep it sort of like, in the shadow box frame that it sits in. It's kind of opened up a little bit in layers. Yeah. It's just such a beautiful release. And for this kind of movie to have that kind of release means so much to me, because you expect this from a Star Wars or something like that. They're going to have special editions.
Right.
But a movie like Ghost Story, that's so cerebral and so strange to a lot of people, essentially dialogue free. It's essentially a silent film about death and about permanence of impact in this world and leaving an imprint on those around us and all of that. It's such an emotional movie that I needed it in the room with me somewhere. And when this release came out, there's no other release of any film that I look at with such reverence as this thing sitting in a shadow box on my wall. And it faces me in my office every day up there on the wall as a reminder. And I also have, as an aside, I just got this, there's a new book that the cinematographer for the film put out.
Oh yeah.
And
nice.
it's all these stills from the film and script pages and things like that, and that just came out. So I have that sitting back here too. But anyway, A Ghost Story, this Japanese release, and I can't tell you the name of the company because I cannot pronounce it for the life of me. But if you look up Ghost Story Japanese Blu-ray, you'll find it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure David Lowery is loving that you're buying all his Blu-rays and passing them out to, he's keeping them in business.
Happy to do so.
Did you see The Green Knight yet?
I did.
It's great. Did you like it?
Yeah,
I liked it.
Interesting. Visually, it's a beautiful film.
Yeah, it is.
I'll say that for sure. Yeah.
I did. I went to. I was able to go to the Telluride Film Festival a few years back ago, and I was there when he had his movie Old Man and the Gun.
Oh.
Was there. And that was nice. I don't think he was there, but I think Redford was there for a little bit. I missed him though, because he was at I think he went to one of the first screening of it and did some talking, but I missed him. I was like,
oh man.
But I did get to see Quran with Roma, so yeah. But that was nice.
Q&A, was there Q&A?
Oh yeah, he introduced the movie and then he stayed and watched it with us and then talked afterwards. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, but awesome. Yeah, I love The Ghost Story. It is such a just a melancholic film to just. I mean, I remember everybody when this movie came out, all they wanted to do was talk about that scene where she eats the cake, in the kitchen. I'm like, really? Like, is that all you remember from the movie?
But you know what? That scene is fine to talk about because that scene is dealing with loss. That scene that's the sort of internal, just sort of vacuum that allows you to focus solely on one thing. And anyone who's experienced loss on that kind of scale, or any kind of big, large scale, you know what it feels like for it to just bottom you out. And it's not about depression eating or something. People were minimizing that to make it so stupid sounding. It sounds so dumb the way people were talking about it. But what it is it's a woman who's had the bottom fall out in her life in that moment. And she literally just needs something to focus on and something that she can control. What can she control? Yeah. It's just that in that moment. And so such a powerful moment to be boiled down to a bunch of jokes was kind of bothersome to me. But I understand a lot. I mean, you have to see the movie to get it. So.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of confidence for a director to do what he did in that film a lot, which is just hang on a frame for minutes, and just let the actors do their thing and let the film, put you in a trance.
Yeah, well, I
which
saw
is what that
Dune
movie
yesterday.
does.
And Blade Runner 2049 is one of one of the greatest contemporary films, in my opinion. And it's an incredible rarity in that I think in some ways it surpasses the original in a lot of ways, and another emotional roller coaster for me.
Yeah.
But Denis does the same thing. He'll hold on a scene. He puts you in a room. He puts you in the environment. You're feeling the weather of something. You're swimming in every element as much as you can. And that's the kind of cinema that I love most.
Definitely.
Are the movies that allow us to not just experience things, but also to be in them, to like immerse ourselves in them. That's the richest experience.
It shows you how much editing is important in film.
Oh,
like editing is just the most
and
important.
Score, editing and score.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
But
anyway, that's my ghost story.
Definitely. You stole one of. No, I'm just kidding. You didn't steal one of mine out. But this definitely would be on the list. It is a horror. It's a horror in a whole other way. I think that's the interesting thing about horror film is it's such a vast genre that can go. I mean, especially nowadays, you see A24. A24 puts out a lot of these films where, which they put out the Ghost Story, I think, if I'm not.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They do so many different spectrums of different types of horror. Like they got that new film coming out, Lamb, that where it's like a folky, like weird horror. It's horror. It seems weird. I'm gonna be creeped out by it, I'm sure, to an extent. But
I can't wait to see it though.
Yeah, me
Man,
too.
It looks
But
so good.
they've been doing a great job putting out a variety of different types of horror films, and I'm guessing we're gonna have a lot of that here. So, but speaking of silent movies that are silent, I'll go ahead and do my next one since it's a great transition.
Nice.
Nosferatu. I have the Eureka release here of Nosferatu, and this is kind of one of the originals. Like it's one of the, F.W. Murnau. Of course, this is mostly known for kind of giving you the beginnings of the Dracula. A lot of the things that are popular about vampires in stories throughout history, especially present history. A lot of the ideas about vampires, the sunlight thing and all that stuff came from this film, and not necessarily the Dracula story. So yeah, I mean, the images in Nosferatu have always just, hit me in certain spots in my soul. I'll be watching this film in the dark, and just the images of the long fingers and his face, which of course I love the Nosferatu from What We Do in the Shadows. If you watch that, the kind of doing that again. And he always gets done. The thing about Nosferatu is that the first time I think I even saw Nosferatu was in SpongeBob. I think he showed up in a SpongeBob episode, and they made fun of him, and I was like, "What is that?" I don't know. But then it came back later, and I was like, "Oh, that's where I saw that SpongeBob thing." It was in a movie from a silent film from the 1920s. But it's always German expressionism. A lot of them films from that era, like M, and things have always struck a chord with me. And so yeah, Nosferatu has always been one of my favorites to go back and rewatch every once in a while. And yeah. That's one of my picks. So,
okay, I guess I'll go next. But a little bit on Nosferatu. We were talking about movies that, would be lost to time. Famously, I believe the original negative of that film had to be burned to settle a suit with the Bram Stoker estate.
Yeah.
Because the movie is so closely related to the Bram Stoker Dracula story.
Yeah.
So that movie almost, I guess, didn't exist past that point to this day, interestingly enough. But yeah, all-time classic for me, I'm going to go with a film that's been in my collection for a while, and that is House by the Criterion Collection from 1977. What has always caught me about this movie is the cover of the Blu-ray is just that orange demonic cat creature. It's just like jumping out at you, and I know that image is so iconic because they made a T-shirt with that image on it that I've always wanted, and it's just this movie's just so unbelievably difficult to explain to people what it's about, because it's wild film. It's so crazy and unpredictable, and that's what I really love about when I think horror is at its best, I think is when it's unpredictable, because everyone says, oh, horror is so predictable, when there's going to be a jump scare, when there's going to be someone's going to die or anything like that. But with House, from one scene to the next, crazy upon crazy things are happening. And the premise of the film, I think this group of young girls, they go to this kind of house in the woods. If anything, it's kind of a weird, Hansel and Gretel story, and they think it's kind of this peaceful house in the woods, and it turns out to be, I believe the woman there, some type of witch or something. It's been years since I've seen it, but it was one of the first Criterions that I ever had. It's one of the first ones that I watched, and it's just a mind-boggling film. And this Blu-ray release is from 2010, so it's a bit older. It's kind of one of their early releases, but it does have quite a few special features.
Maybe they'll re-release it in 4K. That seems to be the thing.
You never know. I mean, they did a bunch of those releases so far. They've announced them all already, so they need a new slate, don't they?
They need a new slate of 4Ks to announce.
They do. I just remember this being the film that was on everyone's recommended list when I first started collecting Criterion around 2010, 2011 or so. And yeah, so that's mine for this round.
All right, Justin. So what did you got for your next pick?
So the next one is also an older release that it's Criterion. So following up on that, it's a natural extension of what you were saying there. The Carnival of Souls double DVD set. And
nice.
This is the one that came out some years ago. Let me see what year it was. 2000. So this came out in 2000. It's the only version that has the extended cut of the film on it.
Oh,
so there's a second disc that has an extended cut, and the regular cut is 78 minutes. The director's cut is 83. And the new Criterion Blu-rays that have come out, nothing Criterion's released since has included that extended cut. So if you can find this, it's got the foreign poster art on the cover and a plethora of special features. I mean, commentaries, interviews, historians, behind-the-scenes stuff, the original organ score isolated. It has so many features on it. It's an amazing disc and a great example of hold on to the releases that came before, because I'm not sure that extended cut's ever going to be available again or in any kind of up-res. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with it, that I've found at least. I mean, unless you guys are clued into something I'm not. But I just really love Carnival of Souls. I know it's one of those public domain horror host staples that people might be a little burned out on. But if you can track this one down, it's worth seeing that extended cut of the movie, because if you thought it was an experience before, I mean, it's that plus another 20% or so to go through this version of it, and even more mesmerizing as a movie. And it's really unfortunate that they just released it on 4K, I think it was, maybe that 4K release or something that came out, or at least a recent Blu-ray that they redid at Criterion, and I was so sad that it didn't come out with it. So this is one to track down for sure if you can find it.
All right. Well, my next one, I think I brought this up at some point earlier in the episode, but Eyes Without a Face, the French surgical horror, which is one that I love that genre. We actually, Indicator just put out a film called Corruption with actors.
Peter Cushing.
Yes, Peter Cushing. I was like, actors slip in my mind. Peter Cushing, and it's very similar to this, where you got a man whose wife gets in an accident, and he has to find a way to fix her face. And in Eyes Without a Face, he's kidnapping these women and killing these women and taking their faces, and it keeps not taking. The skin just not, and in the meantime, she wears this kind of weird mask and walks around the house and is just creeping you out the whole time. And, it's a nice tight 90 minutes, and it's one of them films that you could even turn off the sound, and watch this one, and it would just keep you interested the whole time. And, what was that movie that came out recently? They kind of played into that mask. It was a Goodbye Mommy Goodbye Mama, or
Oh my goodness.
yeah, the woman in that film wore a mask similar to this. I was like, man, they're tapping
I
into.
think it's Goodnight. I think it's Goodnight, Mommy.
Yeah, and
What it makes me think of is Dwight in The Office, when Dwight cuts the face off of the CPR dummy, and he puts it on.
yeah.
When I saw that Eyes Without a Face, that's the movie that came to mind when he's tipping his head back, and anyway, that's what that
Yeah, oh
was.
yeah,
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs.
yeah. But
it is Goodnight, Mommy. Basically, what happens is this mother, she had like some type
Plastic
of, I guess,
surgery.
plastic surgery on her face.
Yeah.
It's just she has the bandages, and these two little their two sons don't believe it's her. So they just won't listen to
It's a
her. They
weird
start
movie.
doing kind of weird things and stuff.
that might even be an A24 movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Could
I
be.
think so.
Came out 2014 for anyone.
But
who was interested
but Eyes
in it.
Without a Face, it's definitely a favorite of mine. I go back to it pretty routinely, and it's just got great imagery also. So anybody else? I'm guessing, Justin, you've seen yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. It's
Yeah.
definitely a classic, and it's an exercise in atmosphere too.
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's a good one to sit and just sort of it's an easy background movie as well. It's a good one for sure.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, what you got?
Yeah, I don't know if this counts as cheating or whatever, but it's going to be a box set. Because I initially thought the premise was like, what edition in our
Oh yeah, I mean, it could be a box
collections.
set. It could be a box set. Go for it.
But it's going to be William Castle at Columbia, Volume 1. And this is the set that has The Tingler, 13 Ghosts, Homicidal, and Mr. Sardonicus. And yeah, these are all his kind of things that aren't The Haunting of Hill House. Is like the films he did right after that in that late 1950s, early 1960s wheelhouse. And yeah, this is an amazing set. I did sometimes, Justin, I like to shout out my YouTube channel.
does this all the
get
time.
ready for that. Yeah, he does Cabzilla Productions, where where I did a review of this set and just went in, the ins and outs of it, all the discs and all the special features and the packaging and all that kind of stuff. Gorgeous set. It's got, I believe it has all of these movies in separate cases in a box, and it's got just tons of features all about William Castle. So, like you were saying earlier, Justin, a lot of these editions teach you so much, and you learn everything you need to know about William Castle in this set, like what he was all about, how he was kind of like the B-movie version of Alfred Hitchcock, with all these kind of, the way he would intro these movies, like Alfred Hitchcock Presents would do it, and all the different gimmicks he would have for these movies, and all this kind of stuff was just incredible to learn about. And these movies are pretty fun and entertaining as heck, too. That's what I really liked about them. And yeah, it's a heck of a box set. It's from Indicator. It is out of print now, I believe, but you can still get the individual standard releases of the films. I really enjoyed William Castle, the King of the Gimmicks. And I know there's a Volume 2 set as well. I would love if they would put out a version of Haunting of Hill House, like one of their like deluxe collector's editions, just so I could have, all of those movies like in a row. That would be kind of cool to see on a shelf.
It's important.
Yeah, it's important. Aesthetics. Pride. Kind of got to impress people, I guess. But I just became a big William Castle fan. I had known of him, but I hadn't sat down and gone through his filmography and all that kind of stuff, which actually led me to Matinee, which is the Joe Dante film from the early 90s, where John Goodman's basically playing a fictionalized version of William Castle.
Dick Miller's also in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and Joe Dante, the Dick Miller connection from earlier. And yeah, it was a fun kind of William Castle rabbit hole to fall down into.
Awesome. All right, what you got next, Justin?
Next out is one of my all-time favorite restorations, and that is when Synapse. It took forever to come out, but Synapse, their release of Suspiria, and the Steelbook version of it is so beautiful. Their picture on this, the extras are incredible. There's a real plethora of extras, but this is a great example of buying it just for the transfer and the audio. It's worth it alone. the first time I saw Jaws, the Universal restoration of Jaws on their Blu-ray, that knocked my socks off in terms of a cleaned up, noise reduced, beautiful, pristine picture. But nothing has bowled me over in terms of a re-release like this release of Suspiria, which is another one that Anchor Bay went to the well on a number of times historically. So people probably have multiple versions of this on disc. But it's absolutely 100% recommended to pick up the 40th anniversary edition from Synapse. And if you can get that gorgeous steelbook, it's worth it too. I don't know as much about what's in print, what's out, if it is in print or whatever. Spend the money to get this, because this is one of those movies that's so visually striking that it should be seen as good and clear and clean as you can see it, and it's never ever been presented like it is in this set. Synapse home run with this. I mean, just absolutely amazing release. So good.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one I think I've had in my shopping list, and now you've just made me have to pull the trigger. So
do it. It's amazing. So good.
All right. Well, the next one I'm gonna highlight here is a friend of mine actually introduced me to this film, and this is actually from Shout Factory, and it's a horror comedy, and it's actually probably the genre of comedy that I get into the most. Just I love the combination of laughs and horror, and it just plays off each other so well. And we actually got a chance some years back ago. I actually got a chance to interview not only the director, but also we got to talk to the main actor from Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. And it's just such a fun film. Speaking about found footage type of movies, documentary style. This one really kind of puts it on its head, where you're following around the killer himself, and the killer's like, "Hey, I'll show you how I do it," but really at the same time, he's setting a trap, and it's just so fun, and the people involved just, of course, Scott Wilson, who we lost not too long ago, playing kind of the Black Christmas character, they don't really say it, but they do, like it's there, and just, just the talent. Like, I want to see Nathan Basil back. They've been trying to get, I think, like, I even put money towards a short film that the director was trying to, or the writer was trying to get all on board for a short film. I don't think that ever happened. I don't think, but it's okay. They did a comic book thing, I think, for a while. And I wish we could get a sequel to this. It's just such a great slasher character that I think brought something a little bit different. And, I'm just a big fan of Behind the Mask: Rise of Leslie Vernon. This is a great addition, with a lot of some audio commentaries, and it, of course, looks great. So, can you say anything else more about this? So I don't know that you didn't work on this one though.
I didn't, but I love that movie. I think it's one of those that twists convention, and it's refreshing. It's an evergreen, refreshing experience to watch it, because it's always fun, it's always relevant. And it's so different that it sort of stands by itself. There really isn't anything else out there.
Favorite line: "Paradise Lost, found it." He pulls the book off the shelf. Yes. He's like, "Oh yeah."
It's so full of little goofy moments. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Nathan Basil's timing. He just had a lot of great moments. Probably one of the best moments is probably when he's talking about how he chases people, and he's like showing how you have to run, and then you have to stop. You have to start walking again. Then you got to run. Right. He's got to get his cardio in. It's like
all the things we've hypothesized about for years as Friday fans or whatever. Yeah.
That's the great thing about it is they make some great jokes about the things you kind of point out in horror films, especially slasher films, that you're like, how did they do that? Well, he's showing you. This is how it's done. He sets the traps beforehand. This window, he nails it down so you can't open it. But Andrea, you've seen this too, right?
I have seen it. Actually, when I first met Steven, he had talked about this movie, and then that's what had prompted me to see it myself. So thanks to him, I had seen it, and this was long before that Blu-ray was even announced.
Yeah.
So that Blu-ray, I think, is from like 2018. I think
it's relatively new. Yeah.
It's relatively recent. It's a great horror mockumentary, you could say, with a twisting third act. But for me, because I think I'm up, right?
Yeah, you're next, buddy.
I'm glad you're keeping track. For me, I'm going to another box set, and kind of similar to the William Castle set, or at least takes place in the same type of time frame, is the Vincent Price Collection Volume 1 from Shout Factory, which I think is also released through their Scream Factory line, or at least the reprint of their Volume 1 edition is. This has The Fall of the House of Usher, The Haunted Palace, The Mask of the Red Death, The Pit and the Pendulum, Witchfinder General, and The Abominable Dr. Phibes. I'm just a gigantic fan of Vincent Price. I just absolutely just love everything he does, because no matter the quality of the movie, he's always going 100%. Like, he's always, like, amazing. Like it's like putting a Shakespearean actor into anything. He's got that full tilt going.
Speaking of that, Theater of Blood. Shakespearean Vincent Price.
Speaking of which, with Theater of Blood, which I think it's either in the second or third volume of this release. It just got a re-release from Kino Lorber that we talked about. A lot of his stuff just got re-released by Kino Lorber Studio Classics that were both in the Volume 2 set of this line and the Volume 3 set as well. So these sets are kind of out of print, I would assume, at this point, or something like that. But I remember when these first came out around 2013 through 2016, and I had always wanted them, because I was just like, I need Vincent Price in my collection. I don't have much of his stuff. And I know he had done non-macabre work. You know, he was in Laura, which is notoriously one of mine and Steven's favorite film noirs of all time. And he's also in Leave Her to Heaven as well. But this is the era in which he was, bringing it back to Roger Corman, he was working a lot with Roger Corman, doing these Edgar Allan Poe, inspired films at the time. And I just love Vincent Price. I just absolutely adore him. This set here gives you six of his films in that era. They're not. I would say they're all pretty good. For at least for me, the Witchfinder General is something completely different than I think the others are. Where he's playing he can play an antagonist and a bad guy, but I just found him to be incredibly cruel in Witchfinder General. That was just the only difference for me. But yeah, I love this set.
Steven? Justin, I want to pitch this to you. I pitch this to people all the time. We need, since you're a Nicolas Cage fan, we need a Vincent Price movie with Nicolas Cage playing Vincent Price. What do you think?
No, it'd be amazing.
I know, right? It needs to happen. I can see it. You can see the goatee. I can see the,
that's the biopic of the century.
Yeah. God, I want to see it so bad. But, all right, Justin, what you got next?
All right, I'll piggyback on your Vincent Price a little bit. I'm a huge fan of his. And then so much so that I even own a box set of the Brady Bunch that includes a 2-episode arc where Vincent Price plays sort of this guy in a cave in Hawaii. They took the Brady's.
Is that the one? Yeah, when they go to Hawaii and they find the medallion.
They do,
thing?
And then they're sort of haunted by this, and things keep happening. All these awful things. There's a surfing accident and all this, and they find out that it's this guy in the cave that's kind of behind it all, and it's Vincent Price in there, and it's a 2-episode arc. But I bought this box set of, I don't even know what season, whatever it was, of it, just because I love him so much. And over the years, one of the most amazing relationships that I've developed is with Alice Cooper, and who is obviously friends with Vincent and a huge fan of his, and brought him in for a number of different projects, including his TV special that he had, and his concerts still have Vincent's voice, kicking off the evening, and his reverence for Vincent just means the world. But this leads me to another unlikely title that I never thought that would see Blu-ray release that I really treasure, and that's Monster Dog. And this was put out by Kino Lorber back in, it's a few years ago, but it was I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. But this was Monster Dog. Have you guys seen Monster Dog?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Not a lot of people know about this movie. What's crazy about it, have you seen Troll 2?
I think so, yeah. I think I saw that a while back ago, yeah.
Troll 2, Troll 2, famously referred to as the best, worst movie ever made. Claudio Fragasso, the director of that, and he also made Monster Dog. And this is an Italian monster movie with Alice Cooper as the lead in it. and he, spoiler alert, turns into a werewolf in the film. But it was a really interesting point in Alice's career. It's more than a monster movie, because you're also seeing Alice at a really vulnerable stage, because he had really fallen into the throes of addiction prior to this, and essentially his career was it was essentially in ashes, because he couldn't hold it together. He couldn't keep it together for live performances, being reliable with recordings and stuff. He doesn't remember recording some things because of this. And he went through rehab and cleaned himself up, and he wanted to prove to himself that he could work again. He's like, I need to know, because he was terrified of approaching performance without being on something. Because Alice is a character in Vincent's mind. Vincent being Alice Cooper's real name. Alice Cooper's a character, but he only knows how to perform as this character, and that character has always been drunk or something. And so he needed a way to prove to himself that he could work without being on anything, and he wanted to have it be in a pretty safe way. And he's a huge fan of B and Z grade movies, horror movies especially. And so it was the perfect marriage when this got pitched to them, to his agent. And Alice is like, man, this is just perfect, because it puts me in a remote castle in the middle of nowhere in this big house. It's with a bunch of people I don't know. So I'm going to have to be responsible for myself. And it's in a monster movie, and I get to do this werewolf thing. And he was so excited about it. And he still talks about it with such love and enthusiasm that he's just thrilled to be a part of this thing. And Kino did a nice job on this. There's some new interviews with Fragrasso and a number of other folks in this documentary that comes on it. The transfer looks good. I know Kino doesn't always do new scans, but on this one, it looks really nice. And such a worthwhile release that I'm pretty sure is still in print and totally worth tracking down. For any werewolf completist, if you're a Troll 2 fan out there, if you're an Alice Cooper fan, it's really one of a kind, because he appeared in this. And then he also, further exemplifying his love for B and Z grade movies, was in an Asylum film called Bigfoot a few years ago, which stars Danny Bonaducci and what's the older brother from Brady Bunch, as like these two competing ex-rock icons. Anyway, it's this really bad, but I love it so much, CGI Bigfoot movie where Alice Cooper gets kicked by Bigfoot off stage, and it's amazing. So anyway, for Alice Cooper completists and monster movie lovers, you got to check out Monster Dog from Kino. Can't recommend it enough.
All right. Well, you got me. I'm sold. So the next one I'm going to present here is one we kind of brought it up slightly earlier in conversation, but the film Raw. And I got the Second Sight edition here, which is great. It's got booklet, it's got, postcards, and it's got some nice, limited edition, whether it's interviews with the director, and the actors. And it's one of them films. I actually recently just showed it to my wife for the first time. And I hesitated because she's not as open-minded as I am about movies. And of course, this is also in French, so not everybody is as into that. And I'm like, look, I'm telling you, when they start biting people, like they start blood, you'll get into it. And she did. She ended up liking it. It's got one of the great endings, I think, in a horror film in recent years. I really love the ending, and I think it's just one of them things that I think the best horror films do is they can unsettle you. And I think this film has a lot of unsettling moments, and the director, you have to help me with the last name, because I suck. If you ever watch this, you listen to any episode, I suck at pronouncing things. But Julia Ducournau,
it's Ducournau.
Ducournau, yeah. So
yeah,
she directs the hell out of this thing, and like I said, I want to see Titane because that looks amazing too. And I just really love the kind of vibe of this. She goes to college and she's always been a vegetarian, and then she's made to eat a piece of, I think, liver or something from a pig or something, I don't know. But from there on, she just starts to get the taste for meat, and it just grows and grows and grows, and it's disturbing and unnerving, and one of my favorites of the past few years. So yeah.
Great movie, and I have that release too. It's so incredible, because that really hadn't had proper treatment either, and certainly nothing expansive. And when that came out, that was a day one order for me, for sure. I love her, and I love that film.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that before the podcast. Like, they took them so long to put out a release of this that we could really get our hands on them. I think there was, an overseas release, Andrew?
Yeah, when it first was getting releases, because it came out in 2016.
Yeah.
When it first was getting releases, here it only got DVD release, but overseas a couple of Blu-ray releases popped up, and I bought one from Australia because it was the best one available at the time. And we've only gotten a Blu-ray release here in the U.S. of March of this year. So it took them 5 years to get us a Blu-ray release, and it was from Shout Factory. And a lot of the special features I had from that Australian release was ported over. A lot of the special features were. And I don't know. I love the movie. I don't know why it took so long. I have no idea why it took so long. Also, I don't know why the release is not showing up when I'm searching for it now. But I do have it.
I believe you. I
should
believe
probably
you.
get it off my shelf. But you believe me. You believe me. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of the movie, and that second sight release is I think it's still in print. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's still available. But
believe it.
They always put out a standard edition, even if you can't get the limited edition. But all right.
Yeah, I did find the release. It was from Monster Pictures, a company I have no idea who they were, but they put it out in September of 2017, and it was Region A and Region B, and it did come with a lot of special features. But I think it's out of print now. I don't even remember how I got it, to be honest with you. I bought it from some Australian website at some point.
That sounds dangerous. Sounds dangerous.
But, yeah, I guess it does. It was before the worlds of imprint and umbrella, I guess.
Well, at least imprint, but
yeah.
All right. What's your next pick, Andrew?
That's a good question. It's
what?
I believe it's the Tremors 4K limited edition release that I've talked about on the show many times from Arrow Video, or just Arrow, however you want to say it. I'm still amazed by just the amount of special features and how amazing the movie looks. I say this all the time on this podcast, and just in general to anyone who will listen to me talk about movie
Tremors.
releases.
Yeah,
about Tremors. It's a 2-disc release, and it's chock full of special features on both the 4K disc as well as the Blu-ray disc itself, and the movie's never looked better. Like, the movie looks stunningly gorgeous, and I've said this kind of similar to what we were talking about before when it comes to the older Blu-rays versus now and new editions and whatnot. The editions that have existed of Tremors for years, whether it be whatever edition they've trotted out there, have never looked particularly good. And now we've got this amazing edition that's probably the definitive edition going forward. I don't know how it could get any better than this.
You talk about the 6Ks are going to be coming soon.
Are they coming soon? What about the 8Ks? Yeah. Who knows? Who really does know? When we joke about it, but I wouldn't. They're selling 8K TVs for some crazy reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. But yeah, like I was saying, Tremors is kind of a horror comedy movie. It's so entertaining. The cast is great in it. Young Kevin Bacon. You can't really go wrong with him at that time of his career. Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Reba McEntire's in the film, if people are fans of her and her music, and that TV show that was on forever with sitcom. But Tremors, I know, has had tons of sequels. It's had a TV show at one point. They tried to reboot it with another TV show a couple of years ago where they shot a pilot with Kevin Bacon reprising his role, and it didn't get picked up. So there's an extensive Tremors franchise that there's comic books and video games and all kinds of stuff. But the original film is really where it's at. And this is one of the better releases of it. Or, like I said, the best release. And I just loved it. I think I got it for Christmas last year. I think I got it for Christmas last year.
You bought it for yourself, though, right?
I buy stuff for myself. No one buys me stuff.
All right.
If anything, all of these are all gifts to ourselves. Anyways, think about it.
I try to tell my parents and my family, and so I'm like, Guys, just give me money. I'm just gonna buy stuff for myself. Just let me buy mine.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, Justin, what's your last pick you got here?
All right, my last pick is from Kevin Tenney. It's a film called The Cellar, and it came out from Vinegar Syndrome earlier this year. It's a 2-disc set, and this is something that's interesting because I was at a film festival years ago in Indiana that I was hosting, and he screened The Cellar, but he screened a version that he says is the real version of the movie, and it's the only print that was in existence. It was something he had initially screened for cast and crew prior to the producers getting their hands on the movie and then completely rearranging, cutting stuff, adding new things. They did all these, they complete like classic, what we came to know like Miramax fuckery with movies where they get in there and just muck around with all the parts and it comes out the other end looking completely foreign to the filmmaker. And Kevin was always very proud of this movie, but it was never released in a form that he really would promote very much because he's like, it really kind of isn't my movie. Vinegar got their hands on the licensing for this. I don't know what happened because from what I understood, the reason it hadn't been released in its true form prior to this was because it was there was something with the producers, some long-standing thing. But anyway, they released it. Not only do they have new scan of the released version that people may be familiar with, but this also presents that uncut, original cut, I guess I should say, version of the film that he has so long wanted to have out there. And it's a desert monster movie.
Yeah.
To play on Tremors extension, I guess you could say, to some extent here. It's a quiet little movie that does a lot with a little. I really like the monster design in it. I think that the kid in it's especially good. This is another one with just a bunch of character actors that you're going to recognize in the neighborhood saloon and all these things. And it's it's a fun ride as a movie. It's an unusual thing that not a lot of people have found. So it's one of those rare things, like if you like Night of the Demons, which is Kevin Tenney's most famous film, then you can further explore Kevin Tenney in a movie that a lot of people haven't even seen. I don't think it ever made it beyond VHS initially. And Vinegar, once again, has pulled this from the ether and rescued it in true Vinegar form by putting 2 versions of the movie available on there. And I'm sure this is still available because I doubt they've sold out of The Cellar. But I do recommend picking this disc up. And I know Vinegar will have a Black Friday sale coming soon, too. So maybe you can get it on there if nothing else.
Yeah, I already got a Flesh for Frankenstein pre-ordered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, now I'm going to have to build a list for when the actual sales comes around now. You got a couple things that I got to think about. So, but the last thing I'm going to bring up is a more recent film, also kind of a horror comedy, sci-fi thrown in there. This one I watched. I was a little late to the game watching it, but when I watched it, I was like, God, I love this movie. And I decided to go. They have a couple different releases, but I decided to get the Umbrella Entertainment release of Psycho Gorman. Psycho Gorman is a hilarious movie. I mean, you got this kind of like ancient alien monster that's kind of fell to Earth, and he's kind of imprisoned on Earth, and he's got this stone that can control him, and these kids find it, and then they just basically control Psycho Gorman. They get him to do whatever they want. And, kids are kids, and just the monologue Psycho Gorman goes on about killing people is gold. Just like, I'm going to kill you. He just goes on these like rampages about how he's going to just kill you in your sleep or, rip your guts out. And then they're just like, okay, I'll see you, Psycho Gorman. Bye. All right. And it's just moments like that in the movie just I love it. And I watched this for the first time. I was sick. I actually, I got my COVID shot, and I got sick from the COVID shot, and I was sitting on the couch watching Psycho Gorman, and Psycho Gorman got me through my COVID vaccine. So I want to thank Psycho Gorman for that. And but yeah, so have you guys seen Psycho Gorman?
I haven't seen it, but it was so hyped. I saw so many people losing their minds over it, and I just haven't had a chance to check it out yet. But I have a buddy who fell in love with it.
Yeah, I would highly recommend. It's there's just a gleefulness about how kind of like it knows what it's doing. You know, it really goes for it when it comes to like monster effects. There's a lot of great monster effects in this film, and it's almost like it feels like a Power Ranger movie. You know, like it's like really, really, campy and weird. And
did you see Andrew's face when you mentioned Power Rangers? By the way,
no, I didn't
just
see
made
it.
this
I'm
face
sure it
like,
was a great,
what?
yeah.
He's right though. I was thinking of that in my head. 'Cause I've seen
Psycho
the
Gorman's
movie, and I'm
almost like the brother of Ivan Ooze. You know, he's like they look almost similar, and they both have this like smarminess. But then like Psycho Gorman's like the steroid version. He's just like, I will rip your guts out and do
It's
this.
like-
you know, like, and it's I'm telling you, it's worth it. Pick it up.
but it's like R-rated.
Yeah.
It's R-rated, low budget. Like it's all like practical effects and makeup work on Psycho Gorman and the other creatures and whatnot. It's a wild movie. Yeah, that's an interesting pick, Steven.
well, I mean,
I'm not gonna say
whatever. I mean,
not gonna lie to you.
more
there.
interesting than the Cellar. I mean, the Cellar was in it. That's an interesting pick.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, but I guess I want to go super traditional, and I didn't line this up for our guest when I initially thought this. This was just going to be in my list no matter what, and it's because I believe you worked on this, Justin, and this is the Friday the 13th, the deluxe edition collection from Shout Factory, which came out last year.
That's like that release is kind of a miracle. I assumed that would never be possible. I assumed the same thing with Halloween years prior, and they made that happen. But to pull this Friday thing together in the midst of all the insanity of the legal things we've been talking about and the different studio hands that are in the pie here, this was amazing to have happen.
Talk about going on a journey with this collection. Just in the sheer amount of work put into it, but not even the legal stuff aside, just the sheer amount of putting this all together must have been monumental. It's 12 movies. There's 15 cuts. There's how many? There's 16 discs, and just
there's so much stuff
It's rivaling that Bergman set. You know, just
well, hey, they're both pretty prominent on my shelf. I'll tell you that.
The Bergman set looks nice. I mean, that's a huge box and everything.
Yeah, that thing's heavy.
This one looks nice. The art, I mean, it looks nice both ways, and I like that you can reverse the covers too. And they were true to the original artwork on stuff with them. And then there's so many features that we had coming in all the way up to the very last minute that none of them are even really listed. If you look at that, there's a disc that's just the special features on the end. It's like, here's a bunch of other special features. There's maybe a third of the things that are on that disc are actually listed on the packaging because we were just shoveling so much into it all the way up to the end. And that was a unique thing because there were so many producers involved with that, which is rare for one project, but it was so monumentally huge that it took a sort of all hands on deck approach. And everybody was so thrilled to pitch in on this thing because nobody assumed that we'd ever have a chance to work on a Friday. None of us.
Yeah.
No. I had missed out on the Halloween set that had come out a few years ago. The one with it's exactly like this set, but with the black cases, and it famously had Halloween 6, but it had the producer's cut, I think, for the first time.
On disc, yes, correct.
And those features on that disc are exclusive to that disc. So if you buy that disc of Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers separately, you're not going to get any of those features. Mm-hmm. I know that the hard way because I had to buy the regular Universal Blu-ray, and I'm like, there's no features on here. No wonder why it's $5. But I had missed out on that set, so I didn't want to miss out on this.
Well, hey, hold on a second now.
Yeah.
There is one thing that I want to point out just real quick. That's an aside for Halloween fans who are truly trying to gather everything. There is a Universal release of Halloween 2 on Blu-ray, and as a special feature on it, until Shout did it, which I worked on later, Terror in the Aisles is a special feature on that. That was worth buying that release for, just for Terror in the Aisles.
That's why I bought that release.
Yeah, same here, same here. And then in Canada, like Rob's. See, one thing that Halloween box is missing is Rob's theatrical version of Halloween. It only has the uncut version, like the director's cut version of it. Mm-hmm. But I think I can't remember if it's Alliance or who it is. I can't remember the distributor. I have it. There's a Halloween 1 and 2, both of Rob's movies on one disc release that has the theatrical versions of both, which you cannot get elsewhere. And so it's worth picking that up, and that's region free too.
Yeah, I mean, not to go off on the not Halloween again, but yeah, that theatrical cut of Rob Zombie's Halloween was always tough to get, because I think when they first came out, it was always like the director's unrated cut.
Well, there were two releases. It was available both ways, but you had to buy them separately, so you could get a theatrical or you could get the uncut version of it. And then the uncut became the only one on the market. And then this thing in Canada popped up, which, as far as I'm aware, remains the only way to get the theatricals of both of those. And it's so great because they're together. You can just hit play, essentially, and you can watch through the whole thing if you want to see the theatrical experience, which in those movies is justifiably different. Like the endings are different. There are different elements that make them worth owning both, if you want those.
Right.
So anyway, back to your box set. Yes, it was
back to Friday the 13th. Well, I guess technically your box set.
I only did a little
work
bit,
on it.
but yeah.
But it's a monumental set. I did, not to plug my YouTube channel again, I did do a full extensive review of it on Capzilla Productions. I think I did it around when it came out last year, or I think I had done it after I went through the whole set,
which takes about 3
watching
months.
All the movies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I did a whole Friday the 13th marathon because I had only seen the first one, and I really had never taken the time to go through all of them.
Really?
Yeah,
you hadn't at least seen the second one, or the?
I had seen the first one, then I had seen the 2009 one, and I had seen Freddy vs. Jason.
So you never saw the first appearance of Jason.
Well, that's the first one. He's in the first one.
Well, it's the end of the movie.
Like the mask, at least.
Well, that was part 3.
Is that part 3?
Which everyone seems to love. Yeah. I had only seen the beginning of that movie when he picks up the mask.
How cool
I think
for you to experience through that box then.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great way
this was
to
a full
experience
education
these.
for me. It was a full thing, and I had learned a little bit about the rights issues where I think it didn't transition from Paramount to New Line, but they didn't have full rights. They had only had they couldn't call the movies Friday the 13th anymore because they only had the rights to the character of Jason. And that's why towards the end of the box set, you get Jason Goes to Hell and Jason Goes to Manhattan and all that kind of stuff. And I just knocked over my mic. But it's just, and you learn all about that in the box set. And it's really a comprehensive look at the Friday the 13th franchise up until now, because they haven't had a movie in going on 12 years or so. So who knows? And I even mentioned it, I think, in my review, where it's we don't know. There's been starts and stops now for forever. So who knows where that's going to go? But yeah, that's probably the number one set right now, because of just its sheer comprehensiveness, because it's everything from 1980 to 2009.
Yeah.
And we had gotten this before. Didn't Anchor Bay release a complete set like this a few years ago in a tin, but not this?
Well, it wasn't Anchor.
It wasn't
Anchor Bay, but yeah, the tin, and it also had the cut version of Jason Goes to Hell in it, and it was kind of a unique set. But yeah, I kept that one because there are some things on there that are not going to be seen anywhere else too, and it had some gimmicky stuff in it too.
That may have been Warner Brothers, because if it was New Line, they're part of Warner Brothers, or something like that. I remember when those had come out, and then they had re-released the Friday the 13th, couple of them individually, then they had 2-pack sets. The one thing with horror franchises, they re-release these things like hotcakes every couple of years. And so you don't know what's the best versions or what's not the best versions. Yeah. So you're just kind of picking out, what's affordable, I guess, at the time. But I think right now this Friday the 13th set is probably the better one for collectors out there that are listening, if you can still get it, of course.
Well, and they just had, Amazon had a sale on it recently. This is still available. And Amazon had it down to $80 or something recently. There was a 1-day sale, and people were all posting go now. If you've been waiting, go now and get this thing, because it won't be available forever. And who knows how things are going to transition now with the licensing and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really unique moment. That set, I mean, man, the Scream Factory sub-label for Shout Factory, if they've done 2 things that you just want to point to, and there's a sea of amazing things that they've made happen. Look at the Friday and the Halloween boxes, and just, that contribution to the genre, those 2 alone, just amazing. Monumental feats that they've made happen.
Well, that's a good place to stop, guys. Justin, you hung out with us for almost 3 hours. We appreciate you taking.
I made
the
you
time.
wait for me, so I'm sorry.
Oh no, dude, that's nothing, man. But yeah, you took 3 hours out of your schedule here to talk with us, and we really appreciate it. And I think you gave our listeners a lot of great stories and info and just your passion for what you do, man. I mean, we appreciate what you do too, and we'll keep up with you.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you having me on, and for a show like this, for a show celebrating these things, because you're right. There's so many people put so much into these, and these labels really are fans trying to make other fans happy.
Yeah.
And as much as people want to complain about this and that with certain aspects, you just don't. What you're doing here is helping spread the word about something that I think is such an amazing element for fans right now and collectors. It's never been like it is right now. And thank you for all that you guys do, and thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Thank you. I hope maybe we'll do this again one day. Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hit me
this
up.
This is a great conversation. I know you got more stories in you, but and more to come, of course. So. Is there a place that, I'm guessing Reverend Entertainment's the best place to contact you?
Yeah, you can go. I mean, it's just my name, Justin Beahm, and it's Beahm on any social media, and justinbeahm.com to keep updated with announcements on releases and some behind-the-scenes stuff. And yeah, so, I mean, on all social media. And if you ever want to have anybody has any questions or wants to reach out or whatever, just hit me up, because I have messaging open on all of that stuff and through the website too. So thank you for asking.
Yeah. I know you've brought it up a lot of times, but where can we find you, Andrew?
I can be found on Twitter at Kevzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel that I never mentioned, Kevzilla Productions.
Yes. And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me running all the Chasing Labels stuff, whether it be the Instagram, where I'm posting all the goodies I'm getting, or Letterboxd, where I'm posting stuff I'm watching. And I do run Shredder. That's actually where I was able to contact Justin here. You rarely get somebody actually answer your direct messages, but Justin actually answered me, so I was like, yes, I got one. I do all the Chasing Labels stuff, and you can also find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major players. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.